The baby wasn't even a month old, and she wanted to feed it pro powder. I stopped her, explaining that a child's complexion is largely determined by genetics. Unregulated pro powder from dubious sources could contain harmful substances and be dangerous for the child. In the end, my niece grew up healthy back in college. A guy I liked turned me down because my skin wasn't fair enough, her sister-in-law told her. It's all your aunt's fault. If she hadn't interfered, you'd be a fair-skinned beauty. My parents chimed in from the sidelines. Exactly. It was all your aunt's fault for making such a fuss and holding you back. My niece resented me for it, and during the New Year's Eve dinner, she poisoned me with paraquat. I was reborn back to the day when my sister-in-law was 3 months pregnant, just as she was about to take the pro powder. Looking at my parents and sister-in-law, their faces full of anticipation. And my brother, who couldn't care less. I suddenly smiled, this time around. I've decided to let go of my urge to help and just let my sister-in-law raise her own little Snow White one. This is a secret imperial recipe. Back in the day, imperial consorts would take pro powder during pregnancy, and their babies would be born with skin as fair as jade. At a family gathering, my sister-in-law Jade mysteriously pulled a bag of white powder from her purse and said, "When you're pregnant, you really have to be careful about what you put in your mouth. If something goes wrong and it affects the baby, that would be a real problem." Exactly. It's best to follow a scientifically sound diet and avoid these home remedies. The relatives were all talking at once. My sister-in-law's face instantly fell. I stared at the bag of pro powder, which didn't even have a production date, and was lost in memories. She insisted on taking pro powder during her pregnancy, claiming it would give the baby a head start in the womb. In my past life, right here in this living room, she declared with absolute conviction. The expert said that taking pro powder during pregnancy will make the baby 3 shades fairer at birth. The expert she was referring to is that multi-level marketing queen on WeChat who is always flaunting her new Maserati. By the time my niece Snow was in elementary school, that MLM seller was exposed for peddling unregulated, substandard pro powder with dangerously high levels of harmful substances. It caused permanent disabilities, leading to her being banned from all platforms, prosecuted, and sent to prison. Jade said that because she had dark skin since childhood and was teased for it, she was determined that her baby would be a Snow White angel. She even decided to name the child Snow. I couldn't talk her out of it, so I went to the pharmacy and bought her some pro powder from a legitimate source that had passed quality inspections. I told her that if she was going to take it, she should at least use a product with guaranteed quality and not buy unregulated goods from sketchy online sellers. Later, when my niece was born with yellowish skin, the doctor said it was newborn jaundice, which is a normal condition. My sister-in-law was convinced that residual fetal toxins were to blame, so she secretly mixed pro powder into the baby's formula. I found out and put a stop to it, thanks to my insistence. Little Snow grew up healthy, with a sunny, wheat-colored complexion. In college, my niece developed a crush on a senior in her department, but he was interested in her fair-skinned roommate instead. One time, she overheard her senior talking to another student. "So annoying. Snow is always clinging to me. She's so dark. We might as well just call her Black Coal. Haha. Yeah, who would ever like her? She's as dark as a ghost." Heartbroken, she took a brush to the bathroom and scrubbed her skin until it bled. I went home for the Lunar New Year. On New Year's Eve, my niece laced my food with paraquat. In my final moments, I saw the venom in her eyes. "It's all your fault. You cost me my one true love." It turned out that in our previous life, my sister-in-law had been whispering in her ear all along, "If it weren't for your aunt meddling, I would have raised you to be a little snow angel by now." "Myra, you went to college. What's your take on this?" My sister-in-law's voice snapped me back to reality. I turned and met her intense gaze as I replied, "You're the mother, so of course how you raise your child is your decision." My mother shot me a glare, then turned and gently patted my niece. "Go ahead and eat, Jade. Mom's got your back." That gentle look had never once been directed at me, too, this time around. I didn't stop her, nor did I foolishly run to the pharmacy to buy her certified, lab-tested pro powder. She went and stockpiled 3 whole cases of premium-grade pro powder from some multi-level marketer on her social media feed. "Mom, about the money," my sister-in-law turned to my mom and said, "Don't worry about it. I'll cover it for you." With a grand wave of her hand, my mom promised to give my sister-in-law the money. Then she immediately turned around and texted me, "Myra, can you transfer $5,000 to me? Your sister-in-law needs to buy some supplements." "Mom, didn't I just send you money last week?" I stared blankly at the message. "Your brother hasn't gotten his paycheck yet. You'll have to cover it for now. Hurry up and send the money over. Don't keep your sister-in-law waiting." I stared coldly at my mother's self-righteous, urgent message on WeChat, remembering my past life where I worked myself to the bone, yet they thought I earned money easily and that it was my duty to support the family. "You went to university, so making money is easy for you. It's only right that you help out the family." That's what they always said. They never once asked if I was warm enough or had enough to eat while I was working away from home. The only time they reach out is to ask me for money. I don't have any money. After that, I stopped responding to my mom's barrage of messages. Mom and Dad ended up using their own pension to buy pro powder for my sister-in-law, truly model-in-laws, 3 times a day. Not a single dose can be missed. My sister-in-law posts a daily photo check-in on her social media. She took it on time every day, even when morning sickness was severe. She would force it down for the sake of the baby, on several occasions when she was nauseous, feverish, and had severe diarrhea. She didn't go to the hospital. Instead, she consulted the experts in her social media circle. The experts claimed the pro powder was helping the fetus detox, calling it a normal phenomenon. I watched coldly as those boxes of unnaturally white powder dwindled rapidly. In my past life, I gave that advice with heartfelt sincerity. Sis-in-Law. A lot of the cheap pro powder on the market is just ground up seashells. It can contain 10 times more harmful substances than real pearl powder. The ones that look unnaturally white have probably been bleached with whitening agents. If you really must take it, at least choose a product with the official National Medical Products Administration approval. In this life, I just watched coldly as she took her daily dose on time, lost in the dream of giving birth to a fair-skinned baby. 3. After my niece Snow was born, just like in the previous life, her bilirubin levels were high. When my sister-in-law saw her yellowish newborn, her smile froze on her face. The moment my mother saw it was a granddaughter, her face fell, and she muttered under her breath, "Another money loser." Seeing her niece's sallow complexion only made her more irritable. "Look at the sickly little thing. She's clearly got no luck in her future. Jade, you need to make her skin lighter, and fast. How else is she going to find a husband or fetch a decent bride price?" The doctor said it's perfectly normal and will clear up with a bit more sun. It's not normal jaundice. It's clearly leftover toxins from the womb that weren't purged. As soon as they got home, my sister-in-law mixed pro powder with water into a paste and slathered it all over my niece's body. I saw she was still mixing a good amount of pro powder into the baby formula. In my previous life, I was firmly against feeding my newborn niece milk mixed with pro powder, so my sister-in-law secretly added it to the formula instead. At the time, I rushed over to stop her as soon as I saw it. I told her that newborn jaundice is perfectly normal, and with proper sun exposure as advised by the doctor, it would gradually fade away. But in this life, I gently closed my bedroom door. Outside the door, I heard my brother say, "Will this even work?" The doctor said it's normal. What do you know? We didn't have the means before, but now we do. I have to take responsibility for my daughter's skin. My sister-in-law retorted. My mother came out of my brother and sister-in-law's bedroom, shaking her head, and opened my door. "Myra, you went to college, you know better. Go talk some sense into your sister-in-law. Forget about that pearl powder nonsense. Rubbing it with Coptis water is what actually works. What's the point of wasting all that money on a little girl?" I almost spat out the oriental leaf tea I just drank. One uses unregulated pearl powder, the other uses Coptis water. They're really treating Snow like a lab rat. In my past life, after I was poisoned, my soul wandered. I heard my mother crying and telling the police I had depression, that it was a suicide, and that no one else was involved. Clutching my photo, she said she couldn't just stand by and watch my brother's family fall apart. She said I was just a daughter, so my death wouldn't really matter. She even told me that in death, I should still watch over my brother's family, ensuring their health and prosperity. I guess I'm just born under an unlucky star. They drain you dry while you're alive, and then expect your blessing from beyond the grave. What would I know? I've never had children. This time, I didn't take the bait. If you don't go talk some sense into your sister-in-law and something goes wrong, I swear I'll beat you senseless. My mother clenched her fist and made a fainting gesture at me. In my past life, she never stopped my sister-in-law from using pro powder. Instead, she said in front of me, "For a girl, that's about all the value she has. A fairer complexion might fetch a higher bride price, which could help your brother get a bigger house." For soon after, my sister-in-law finished her postpartum confinement. That day, she brought my niece over and placed her right in my arms. "Can you take a look? Does she seem a bit feverish or agitated?" my sister-in-law asked, her eyes fixed on my face. I looked at Snow's slightly pale face and shook my head. "You're the experienced one with kids, sister-in-law. What would I know? Never having had any of my own." My sister-in-law shot me a glare, then carried the child back to the room. "What's the use of a university education? Just a book-smart fool who doesn't know anything. My family never lets me forget that I went to college, as if getting an education were my original sin." I suddenly realized, thinking back to my past life, that no matter what I said, I'd be labeled a jinx. Whether I tried to stop my sister-in-law from feeding my niece pro powder or not, they'd pin the blame on me in the end. This place is no safe harbor. It's a house of horrors out to get me. I need to pack my things in a hurry and find an excuse to move out. The sooner, the better. 5. The very next day, I moved out without a moment's delay. I didn't have many belongings at home. Everything I owned fit into a single suitcase. To put more distance between us, I moved to another city to look for work and rented a place. When my mother found out, she bombarded me with angry phone calls and curses. "You ungrateful wretch. Think you can just fly away now? That you've grown your wings. If you dare leave, don't you ever call me your mother again. After all the years I've raised you, you only think of yourself. What's to become of this whole family? My brother snatched the phone and yelled, "Who's going to do all the housework if you leave? Who's going to look after your sister-in-law in her confinement? Get your ass back here right now. Bro, I'm your sister, not your live-in maid." I replied coldly and hung up the phone, seeing there was no room for negotiation. My mom softened her tone and she texted me, reminding me to send my monthly salary home on time. Raising a child is no easy task. Since you've been to university, you should take on a bit more of the burden. I agreed out loud, but in my heart, I thought, in this lifetime, every single penny is going to be spent on myself. 6. The child was constantly fussy and crying. So my sister-in-law said pearl powder could help calm the nerves. She then used a syringe to force-feed my niece a large amount of pearl powder mixed with water. Strangely enough, after drinking it, my niece fell into a deep sleep. My sister-in-law even filmed a video of my niece in this drowsy state and posted it in the family group chat. See, I told you pearl powder could brighten the skin and calm the nerves. That's the miraculous power of pearl powder. Don't underestimate folk remedies. They can cure serious ailments. Back then, when the relatives found out my sister-in-law was feeding the baby pearl powder, they voiced their objections. They think the child is still young and their digestive system isn't fully developed, so it's best to follow a scientifically sound feeding approach. At this point, my sister-in-law specifically posted a video just to prove her relatives who had opposed her wrong. No one in the group chat replied to her. You can't reason with someone who's hellbent on their own destruction. I quietly closed the video. What my sister-in-law called calming his nerves was probably just him passing out from poisoning. After all this chaos, it's up to Snow's own resilience now. 7. And so, through all the little bumps and scrapes, Snow made it to 2 years old. Late one night, I was at home working on a manuscript. My mom's call came through suddenly. Get over here and take your niece to the hospital. She's having violent convulsions. Hearing their harsh command from across the way, I was reminded of my past life. They were always like this. The moment my niece had the slightest sniffle or ache, they'd call me to take her to the hospital, because this foolish aunt of hers would never ask them to reimburse the medical bills. If you're sick, go to the hospital. What are you yelling at me for? I answered absent-mindedly. There was a distinct pause on the other end of the line. We don't understand these things, but you went to college. Mom, I just went to college. I'm not a miracle worker. I'm 500 kilometers away. By the time I get back, it'll be far too late. They've grown far too accustomed to the old me, the one who was meek, obedient, and sacrificed everything for this family. For over 20 years, I had never once said no. Myra, you get your ass back here right now. If anything happens to Snow, my brother was yelling on the other end of the phone. Bro, you're responsible for your own kids. I cut him off. After all Mom and Dad have done for you, how dare you talk to me like that? My brother's voice was so loud it made my eardrums tremble. You said it yourself. You didn't raise me. If you've got the guts, then never come home. Fine. With that, I hung up the phone and turned on airplane mode. Wouldn't have it any other way. A family that bleeds me dry and crushes my spirit. I'm better off without it. 8. In the end, they took their niece to the hospital. The doctor diagnosed her with toxic substance poisoning and asked my sister-in-law what she usually fed the child and whether she had been exposed to any harmful materials. How could you give a child pearl powder from an unknown source? The doctor scolded. You need to be hospitalized immediately. But my sister-in-law thought it was just a shady doctor exaggerating the illness to make more money. How could pearl powder possibly be harmful? So many people have taken it with no issues. That unscrupulous hospital is just out to make a quick buck. The other parents nearby heard this and urged her to listen to the doctor's advice and follow scientific feeding practices. What a tragedy. The poor child's face has turned blue. A lack of education is truly a terrible thing. My sister-in-law still refuses to see the light. Blind faith in science is just another form of superstition. These methods have been passed down for thousands of years. How could they possibly be wrong? You people are just obsessed with everything foreign and blindly worship Western medicine. You must have faith in our nation. Looking at his frail daughter and hearing the surrounding accusations, the brother began to question his sister-in-law's skin whitening methods for the first time. Jade, could this pearl powder actually be harmful? Look at this news article. This kid took pearl powder since childhood and now he's been admitted to Tsinghua University. My sister-in-law pulled out her phone as she spoke, scrolling through a multi-level marketer's social media feed to show my brother the ads. But the doctors all said, doctors. My sister-in-law suddenly sneered. She had found a video in the multi-level marketer's social media feed. Just look at what this professor from a top-tier hospital says. Pearl powder calms the nerves and detoxifies the body. The post already has over 100K likes. After watching the video, my brother fell silent. Once my niece showed a slight improvement, my sister-in-law insisted on discharging her from the hospital, against the doctor's advice. 9. My sister-in-law is absolutely fixated on lightening her child's skin tone. On top of feeding her pearl powder, she enforces a strict son protection regimen for her niece. She never lets her play in the sun. Whenever they go out, she slathers on thick sunscreen, puts on a sun hat, and makes her wear a UV protective jacket, completely covered from head to toe. My niece watched the children running freely in the square and said enviously, "Mommy, I want to play." My sister-in-law patiently taught her, "Our snow is meant to be a Snow White. She can't go sunbathing like the other children, otherwise, she'll grow up to be a little soot ball. No one likes a girl with dark skin, you know." My niece bit her lip tightly and said nothing. She had heard words like these countless times before. 10. My 3-year-old niece still can't speak in complete sentences. Tests indicate an intellectual disability. The 3-year-old girl's skin was an unnaturally pale white, like a snowman beginning to melt. My mother worries the child is simple-minded and will never find a husband, and she nags my sister-in-law about it constantly. Ever heard the saying, "Great minds speak slowly"? My sister-in-law shot my mother a dirty look. "Stay out of the child's business." Today, my mother called me. "You're the educated one. Go talk some sense into your sister-in-law. You're the child's aunt. You can't just stand by and watch them be ruined. If you ask me, she should hurry up and have a son." I gave a bitter smile. Even keeping my distance from them, I couldn't escape it. No matter what happens, whether I act or not, if the outcome is bad, they always blame me. In my past life, when my niece had a fever, I rushed her to the hospital in the middle of the night. I stayed up until dawn until her fever broke, only to be met with my mother's words, "You're always meddling. A little blessed water would have cured her. Such a minor illness, and you wasted all this money." My child failed the college entrance exam and ended up in a vocational college. My sister-in-law pointed at me, wailing, "It's all your fault. You insisted on taking her to the hospital and offended the god of literature. It's as if I'm the family's jinx, the one who brings all the bad luck. Yet, they rely on the money I send back every month and are happy for me to spend on my niece without expecting anything in return." My mother even took the money I'd been depositing with her every month and used it to buy a house for my brother. Back then, she told me to send money home every month, saying she was saving it for me and would give it to me after I got married. But later, when I needed surgery and didn't have enough money, I asked my mother for it. She said the money was gone and that I had to figure it out myself. On the very day of my surgery, my whole family gleefully went to collect the keys to their new house. Meanwhile, I lay alone in the operating room, with no one giving me a second thought. After I recovered and was discharged from the hospital, I tried to get my money back, only to be met with my parents' furious scolding, "Your brother carries on the family line. You're just a daughter who'll marry out. Of course the money should be spent on your brother. You ungrateful wretch. The whole family scraped together to put you through school, and this is what we get in return." What's even more ridiculous is that in this house, which I paid the down payment for, not a single room was set aside for me. "Then where am I supposed to sleep when I come home?" I asked, my voice thick with hurt. "That sofa bed in the living room is specially for you. It's a couch normally, and when you need to sleep, you just unfold it into a bed." My brother showed me the sofa bed with a beaming smile. I was such a fool in my past life, thinking that if I just gave enough, I could earn that meager scrap of familial affection. "Mom, I've told you, I've never had kids. I don't understand any of this. It's my sister-in-law's own daughter. However she chooses to raise her, you all have to respect that." With that, I stopped listening to my mom's nagging and hung up the phone. In this lifetime, I've come to realize I don't need to obsess over whether my parents love me. Our bond is just for this one life anyway. Besides, I've already died once, killed by Snow's own hand, killed by the familial bond one clung to so desperately. 11. Snow's battered and broken body somehow held on long enough to start kindergarten. On the first day of school, my sister-in-law handed the teacher a long, detailed list of requirements. Seats must be positioned away from windows. Participation in outdoor activities is prohibited, even on overcast days. Take and submit 3 daily photo check-ins. The timestamp and location must be visible via a watermarking camera. The teachers all tried to persuade her. Children need sunlight to get their vitamin D. Proper exercise and physical activity are essential for healthy development. My sister-in-law simply wouldn't listen. In our family, we gave our child pro powder for calcium. The teacher had no choice but to follow the sister-in-law's instructions. However, occasionally seeing Snow looking so lonely, some of the younger teachers couldn't bear it and would still take her to play games with the other children. After starting kindergarten, Snow became noticeably more cheerful and her speech became much more fluent. Today, she excitedly described to her sister-in-law what had happened at kindergarten. "Mom, do you know how to play drop the handkerchief?" "Mom, the other kid was so fast, she caught me." "Mom, what's wrong?" Jade's face fell upon hearing this. "Did you go sunbathing on the sports field, seeing her?" Sister-in-law's strange expression. Snow began to stammer. "No, Mom, we were in the classroom." Without letting her niece finish explaining, Jade grabbed Snow and roughly tore open her clothes to check. After confirming she hadn't gotten a tan, she called the teacher to demand an explanation. "How dare you take my daughter out in the sun without my permission?" The teacher had no choice but to explain. "Little Snow gets so lonely all by herself, and there's hardly any sun outside on a cloudy day, Jade wouldn't listen at all and gave the teacher a solid half-hour scolding. After hanging up the phone, she went straight to filing a complaint against the teacher. The very next day, the kindergarten principal received the complaint forwarded by the Education Bureau. My sister-in-law reported the kindergarten for child abuse and forced sun exposure. 12. Because of this, my niece was ostracized and treated as an outcast at the kindergarten. Gradually, Snow became the invisible kid in her class. While the other children held hands and played games, she could only watch from the window. Mom, one day after school, she suddenly grabbed her sister-in-law's sleeve. I want to play on the slide too. Stop playing around. Her sister-in-law slapped her little hand away. All the other kids can. Why can't I? It was the first time Snow had ever defied her mother. You're not like them. You're meant to be the Snow baby. Her sister-in-law scolded sharply. Snow's lips trembled as she began to cry. I don't want to be Snow White anymore. What do you know? A fair complexion hides a multitude of flaws. You'll understand your mother's good intentions when you're older. With that, she quickly pulled Snow back inside. 14. And so, under her aunt's almost fanatical obsession with skin whitening, the niece dragged her frail, worn-out body into elementary school. When I went home for the Lunar New Year, I saw my niece. She was noticeably shorter than her peers, with a pale, ashen complexion and lips that had a faint bluish tint. Her personality was timid and submissive. She looked to her mother for approval before doing anything. She was a completely different person from the healthy, sunny, and confident girl I remembered from my previous life. Her appearance was already a sign of poisoning from harmful substances. During the meal, she shyly inched closer to me, because of my memories from a past life. I was deeply wary of her. I put down my bowl and chopsticks, refusing to eat another bite. At that moment, she tugged timidly at the hem of my clothes and spoke. Auntie, I don't want to be Snow White. Can you talk to Mom for me? None of the kids at school will play with me. I want to live with you. Auntie, she stammered through both sentences. It seems the pearl powder really did make her a slow talker. I gently patted her hand away and said with a smile, your mother only wants what's best for you. You should listen to her. My sister-in-law nodded at me in satisfaction after hearing my reply. 15. The day after I returned home following the spring festival, my niece was admitted to the ICU due to convulsions. After a full day and night of emergency treatment, the doctor spoke to the family. The toxic substance poisoning was too severe. We've saved his life, but the child will likely have hearing and speech impairments. Impossible. How could a perfectly healthy child be poisoned by a toxic substance? The boy's aunt was screaming and shouting in the hospital. If my daughter ends up disabled, this hospital is going to pay. My sister-in-law's shriek was still hanging in the air when the TV in the hospital corridor broadcast a news report. The Market Supervision Bureau of City A, in a joint operation with the public security authorities, has raided an illegal pearl powder workshop. Tests revealed the product contained dangerously high levels of harmful substances. So far, 7 children have been poisoned and disabled by these substances. Below the report was a photo from the scene of the raid. In a grimy workshop, a woman was directing workers to package pearl powder. That woman was the online seller from whom my sister-in-law had been buying pearl powder all these years. That very pearl powder from the illicit workshop was the toxic substance she had been feeding her niece, without fail, day after day. 16. The phone rang for me again. Myra, are you even human? Your sister-in-law is uneducated. Why didn't you stop her? Now Snow has toxic substance poisoning. Are you happy? My brother was yelling on the other end of the phone. The flames of this mess still managed to reach me, 1,000 miles away. Brother, was I the one who fed Snow all that pearl powder? I wasn't even home. Your whole family was there and no one stopped her, yet you're blaming me. I replied calmly. My brother was left speechless and deflated. Enough of this nonsense. Snow's hospital bill is $8,000 a day. Wire me $200,000 right now. My mom took the phone and said to me, Mom, I'm already 3 months behind on my rent. I whined about being broke. Bullshit. My mother's voice suddenly rose sharply. You got a 50,000 yuan bonus last year. Oh, that. I let out a soft chuckle. I lent it all to a colleague. Her father has terminal cancer. It's not like I could just stand by and do nothing, right? Maybe you could use the money you were going to spend on that gold bracelet instead. Snow's grandma. What gold bracelet? I heard my sister-in-law questioning my mom over the phone. What bracelet? I don't have it. My mom hung up the phone, muttering curses. What a useless burden of a child. 17. My niece has suffered hearing loss, and her language skills are gradually deteriorating. Her intellectual development is also noticeably slower than that of her peers. Elementary school is just not an option anymore. The school suggested my brother and sister-in-law send their daughter to a special needs school. Myra, Snow is pretty much a lost cause. A special needs school costs tens of thousands a year. How could we possibly afford that? She doesn't understand a word anyone says anyway. Might as well just keep her at home. My brother's voice was laced with exhaustion. Your brother and I are thinking about having a second child, my sister-in-law said from the other end of the line. So what? I knew it. They were here to ask me for money again. There was a few seconds of silence on the other end of the line. If only you had stopped your sister-in-law Law from taking that pro powder back then. So, about the money for the second child, you're going to chip in, right? Sure, people really do laugh when they're angry. After hanging up, I sent my brother a 66 yuan red envelope. My brother kept calling me, one call after another, so this time I just blocked him. I knew this wasn't over. The next day, my mom called. She started with some small talk, but I really couldn't be bothered to beat around the bush with her. Mom, you're here to ask me for money, aren't you? The Bai family line must not die out. Myra, what if I just have a child to carry on the Bai family name? I replied, that's completely different. My mother's voice suddenly rose. How is it different? Am I not a member of the Bai family? You're a daughter. The children you bear will carry another family's name. My mom was getting more and more worked up as she spoke. So, I'm an outsider, is that it? I let out a soft, derisive chuckle. Well, I guess an outsider like me shouldn't meddle in your family affairs. Hearing my words, my mother softened her tone. Myra, that's not what I meant. Just think about how hard it was for your dad and me to put you through college, and please support your brother. Enough, you didn't contribute a single penny towards my college education. I didn't want to argue with her anymore, so I blocked and deleted her in one swift move. When I got into university, they refused to support my education and insisted I go work in a factory. They said they needed to save the money for my brother's wedding. I was the only female college student from our village. The village committee had to persuade them for a long time before they finally agreed to let me go. My tuition was covered by a student loan that a teacher helped me apply for. After I started working, I lived frugally for 2 years to pay it off. I've always covered my own living expenses in college by working part-time jobs. When she talks about it being hard, she probably just means that with me away at school, there's no one left at home to wait on their whole family. 18. My brother and sister-in-law started making plans to have a second child. My sister-in-law posted on her social media, my main account is a lost cause. I need a backup. Lying in bed and scrolling on her phone, my sister-in-law searched through every ad for IVF guaranteed to produce a boy. This time, it has to be a son. Over the years, she took pearl powder with her niece, which led to a buildup of harmful substances in her body, making natural conception impossible. Long ago, it took 3 rounds of IVF to succeed. Each egg retrieval was excruciatingly painful, but she said, as long as I can have a son, it's worth it. My parents sold the old house and poured all the money into the IVF clinic. Now the whole family is crammed into a 30 square meter rental, waiting for this precious fetus to arrive. And Snow, you can't even sweep the floor properly. My sister-in-law stood with her hands on her hips and pinched my niece's arm. You little money drain. My mother sat on the sofa, cracking sunflower seeds. If it weren't for you, would our family have fallen to this state? My brother, meanwhile, was scrolling through sexy girls on Douyin, completely tuning us out. Back when Snow was first born, my mom held her up to show her off. My granddaughter is going to be a real beauty. She'll marry a rich man. No, they won't even let her sit at the table for meals. Don't breathe your germs all over your brother. Go eat somewhere else. I was the same when I was a kid. I accidentally broke a bowl once, and my mom hit me so hard she nearly broke my finger. She said that's how I'd remember. It wasn't until I grew up that I learned those bowls only cost $1 each. I looked at my crooked index finger, and tears streamed down my face. In my mother's eyes, I wasn't even as precious as one of those bowls. My brother was roughhousing at home and smashed the TV, but she just held him and soothed him, worried he might have been frightened. Now, the hardships of my childhood are repeating themselves with my niece, and that unborn baby brother has already become the family's new hope. 19. During this time, I received a message from my niece. Auntie, I can't get the chain off my foot. Mom said she needed the crib for my baby brother, so I had to sleep on the balcony. Auntie, can you take me with you? I never replied. 20. I've cut ties with my entire family. That's why I didn't go home this year. On New Year's Eve, I got a call from my neighbor. Auntie, Myra, something terrible has happened at your home. 3 ambulances came. Your brother, his wife, and your parents are all foaming at the mouth. The doctor said it's paraquat. There's no saving them. Paraquat, could it be that Snow has been reborn as well? I pieced together the scene from my neighbor's description. During the New Year's Eve dinner, my sister-in-law found my niece's deathly pale face to be an ill omen, useless girl, wearing a face like a funeral on New Year's. Her sister-in-law slapped her hard. Snow fell to the ground, knocked out cold, and didn't come to for nearly an hour. Not a single family member went to check on their niece lying on the floor. They continued their festive New Year's Eve dinner, happily doting on the little grandson. After waking up, Snow silently fetched the newly bought paraquat and calmly laced the New Year's Eve feast with it. And so, on this day of family celebration, their lives came to an end. Immediately after, I received a call from Snow. Auntie, you've been reborn too, haven't you? I remained silent. I've apologized with the lives of their entire family. Are you satisfied now? Auntie, why didn't you save me? I'll come for you right after I finish with them. In the end, Snow was sent to a juvenile detention center. 21. In the aftermath of the New Year's Eve massacre, I joined the public welfare organization Guardians of a Healthy Childhood and launched the Reject Folk Remedies, Embrace Scientific Parenting initiative. We collected cases from across the country where the use of folk remedies had negatively impacted children's healthy development. We exhibited and explained these cases at the entrances of various maternal and child health hospitals. We also collaborated with 500 pediatric experts and 30 top-tier hospitals to advocate for the revision of safety regulations for infant and toddler health products. We urge parents to pay attention to children's food safety and reject consuming food from unverified sources. True beauty should not come at the cost of one's health. True love means respecting science and safeguarding a child's healthy growth. A parent's fixation should not become a shackle placed upon their child. Story 2. In my past life, my mother-in-law secretly gave birth to an illegitimate child behind my father-in-law's back. My mother-in-law knelt down and begged me to pass off her illegitimate daughter as my child's twin sister. My heart softened in the moment, and I agreed. Later, my mother-in-law's child developed kidney failure. My husband was a perfect match, but my mother-in-law vehemently opposed him donating his kidney. This led to our child's death. Only after the tragedy did I discover the child was actually mine. When I confronted my mother-in-law with the truth, she pushed me down the stairs and I died. I opened my eyes and found myself back at the moment when my mother-in-law was begging me. My eyes fluttered open in a daze. I found myself sitting on the sofa at home. I could still feel the phantom pain of tumbling down the stairs. Never did I imagine the miracle of rebirth would be bestowed upon me. I was overwhelmed with emotion, tears streaming down my face uncontrollably, but then a familiar voice reached my ears. Iris, please, honey, can you just tell people you're having twins? My mother-in-law looked at me with pleading eyes. I clenched my fists so tightly my knuckles turned white, fighting the urge to strangle her. I took a deep breath to steady my nerves. Feigning confusion, I said, Mom, what are you talking about? Whether it's twins or a single baby, that's something we'd have known from the very beginning. Why did you make me claim I was having twins? When the time comes to give birth, where am I supposed to find a second child for your son? My mother-in-law looked embarrassed and began to speak haltingly. I'm pregnant. I feigned shock and raised my voice abruptly. Mom, what did you say? You're pregnant, but father-in-law has been working abroad for over a year and hasn't been home. You're carrying a bastard child. My mother-in-law rushed over in a panic, trying to cover my mouth. I swiftly sidestepped to avoid her. She spoke with clear displeasure on her face. Don't you dare call my child a bastard. This is my baby, your father-in-law, and I lost our connection years ago. The only reason we didn't divorce was for Calvin's sake. I shot her a look of pure contempt. Even if you fell out of love, that doesn't justify cheating on your husband and getting pregnant with another man's child. I spat out the word bastard with venomous emphasis. My mother-in-law bristled with anger, ready to scold me, but she bit her tongue, remembering she still needed my help. Iris, I'm begging you as your mother. Your baby is due around the same time as this one. We can pass it off as yours. I raised my voice. Mom, what are you talking about? If you have this baby, I'll end up having to raise it for you. My mother-in-law quickly explained. No, that's not it. The baby would just be registered under your name. I'll raise it myself. Don't worry. I won't make you do it. I said, Mom, why are you being so sentimental? Well, it's still early. Just get an abortion. But my mother-in-law became emotional. No, this baby is the fruit of the love between me and your Uncle Walter. How could we possibly abort it? I'm feeling a bit nauseous, and it's the fruit of our love, ugly as sin, but still a player. I pretended to be hesitant. Mom, this isn't my call. Let me discuss it with Calvin first. My mother-in-law looked a bit embarrassed. I said, my belly will keep growing. There's no way we can hide this from him. She could only nod in agreement. Just like in my past life, I ended up telling my husband about his mother's pregnancy. The husband objected to his mother-in-law keeping the baby. He insisted on taking her to the hospital for an abortion. She refused and went into hiding. By the time she returned in late pregnancy, termination was no longer an option. My mother-in-law got down on her knees, begging my husband and me. My husband had no choice but to agree to raise the child as a twin. When my husband came home from work, I told him about his mother's pregnancy. My husband was so angry that his whole body trembled. I rushed straight to my mother-in-law's room. Mom, have you lost your mind? How could you cheat on Dad and even get pregnant? Hearing this from her son, my mother-in-law felt ashamed. My husband was furious. Get an abortion tomorrow. No, if you're not embarrassed, I certainly am. At the mention of abortion, my mother-in-law immediately panicked, clutching her stomach. She cried, no, we can't terminate this pregnancy. My husband was absolutely furious, his eyes blazing with rage. Why not? How dare you even think of keeping this bastard child? The mother-in-law retorted angrily, what do you mean, bastard? This is your brother, the husband snapped. What kind of brother is he? He's not even my father's son. Have you even considered how we're going to explain this to my father when he comes back? My mother-in-law looked at my husband with a gleam in her eyes. Don't worry, I've already figured it out. This baby is due around the same time as Iris. We can just pass them off as twins. Your father will never know. My husband pointed a trembling finger at his mother. You're out of your mind. Let me make this clear. I don't agree. And this pregnancy must be terminated. My mother-in-law pointed at my husband with a ferocious scowl. Your disagreement means nothing. I'm your mother. How dare you try to control me? Mark my words. I'm keeping this baby no matter what. My husband was so angry he was speechless. It took him a long moment to find his words. If you insist on having this baby, you're on your own. The conversation between my husband and his mother ended badly lying in bed. Memories from my past life kept resurfacing in my mind in that previous life. Right after I went into labor, my mother-in-law insisted on having a C-section too. She claimed it was to spare my husband from going through the ordeal twice, saying it would be easier to care for us together. Newborns all look pretty much alike anyway. My mother-in-law swapped the babies while we were asleep at night too. My elderly mother-in-law has health issues, and the baby was born with a weak constitution, frequently falling ill every time the child got sick. My mother-in-law was even more anxious than I was at the time. I was delighted that she treasured her granddaughter so much. In contrast, my mother-in-law paid little attention to her own child after giving birth. The baby would often cry hysterically from hunger, yet she refused to breastfeed. She insisted on formula feeding, leaving the child alternating between starvation and overfeeding. Sometimes I couldn't bear to watch and would step in to help feed the baby. As the child grew older, the grandmother would either hit or scold them. That child always had a timid look in their eyes when gazing at people. In contrast, my child was thoroughly indulged by the grandmother. They developed a spoiled and willful temperament. The slightest frustration sends them into a screaming fit. Whenever my husband and I try to discipline the children, my mother-in-law steps in to interfere. She even scolds us for being too harsh with the kids. As the two children grow up, they're becoming polar opposites. One was the little princess of the family, the other was treated like a servant girl. Remembering how that child lived in her final moments brings tears streaming down my face. There she lay, so small and still in bed, emaciated to little more than skin and bones. When the child was 4 years old, my mother-in-law's child was diagnosed with uremia. My husband and I actively pursued treatment for our child. My mother-in-law remained indifferent and even accused us of wasting money. In the end, a kidney transplant became our only option. My husband couldn't bear seeing how pitiful his sister looked, so he went for compatibility testing. Surprisingly, they were a match. When his mother found out, she threw hysterical fits to stop him from donating his kidney. When her efforts failed, she shockingly took the child and disappeared. By the time my husband and I found them back in our hometown, the child was already lying in bed with no breath left. My husband and his mother had a huge argument over it. After we lost the child, I came home early from work one day. I came home to find my mother-in-law on the phone. That's when I learned the whole truth. I completely broke down on the spot. I lunged at her and started hitting her desperately. I immediately ran out to call the police. Hearing that I was going to call the police, my mother-in-law hurried after me. The elevator was taking too long, so I decided to take the stairs. But then my mother-in-law shoved me hard from behind, sending me tumbling down, and just like that, I breathed my last. As I lay there dying, I thought I saw something familiar flash by the stairwell. My daughter was standing right beside my mother-in-law. Later, prompted by her grandmother, my daughter claimed I'd slipped and fallen by accident. My husband was utterly heartbroken, yet he never suspected our 4-year-old child. A faint noise from outside the room snapped me out of my thoughts. I knew it must be my mother-in-law, just like in my previous life, sneaking out without telling anyone. Since she was so determined to have this baby, I decided to support her decision in this lifetime. After all, I have a big surprise waiting for her. After my husband realized his mother had run away, he was extremely anxious and immediately wanted to go out to look for her. He called all our relatives and friends, but no one had any news. We went back to our hometown, but still couldn't find her. My husband wanted to call the police. I stopped him. Honey, your mother is deliberately avoiding you. You won't be able to find her. My husband seemed a bit on edge. She's not young anymore, and pregnant too. What if something happens? I thought to myself, what could possibly go wrong? She's probably with her old flame, I said. She's hiding because she's afraid you'll make her get an abortion. Don't worry, she'll be fine. Once she's further along, she'll probably come back. If you call the police and this gets out, how will my mother ever show her face in public again? My husband gave a weary nod. Soon I entered the 3rd trimester of my pregnancy. One day I came home to find my mother-in-law had returned. My husband furiously lashed out at his mother. My mother-in-law suddenly dropped to her knees right in front of me. I was so startled that I immediately scrambled aside. My husband rushed over to help his mother up. My mother-in-law looked at my husband and me with tears in her eyes. Mom is begging you. Otherwise I'll have no choice but to end my life. My husband glared furiously at his mother, breathing heavily and uncontrollably. Where were you earlier? I told you to get an abortion, but you just wouldn't listen. So now you come to us. Figure it out yourself. I can't deal with this. The mother-in-law immediately started whimpering. Calvin, I know I was wrong. If your father finds out, what are we going to do? This family will fall apart. 3, just help me out this once, will you? My husband turned away without a word. My mother-in-law grabbed my arm again. Iris, if you Won't help me. I don't know how I'll go on living. What am I supposed to do if people find out? Husband, now you're worried about shame. Where was this concern earlier? Mother-in-law became agitated. Fine, I'm a disgrace. I'll go die right now. Without your help I can't go on living anyway. As she spoke, she made a dash toward the balcony. My husband tried to pull away, but I reached out and held him tight. My mother-in-law rushed to the balcony, only to find no one stopping her, yet she didn't dare climb onto the windowsill and could only stand there awkwardly. My husband caught onto his mother's intentions. He just stared at her coldly without saying a word. I almost laughed. If you're going to fake a suicide attempt, at least put on a convincing show. You won't even crawl. I pretended to step in and stop my mother-in-law. Mom, please don't do anything rash. What would happen to your unborn child if you were gone? Your secret would come out sooner or later anyway. Father-in-law would be so furious he'd probably dig up your coffin. My mother-in-law shot me an angry glare. My husband snorted coldly. In the end, my husband gave in to his mother's demands. I agreed as well, which made my husband feel terribly guilty. He's been incredibly attentive to me. If we don't keep the baby, there's no way the show can go on soon enough. My labor started, just like in my previous life. My mother-in-law insisted on being in the delivery room with me. My husband rushed both of us to the hospital. The moment we stepped into the hospital, my mother-in-law was completely stunned. My father-in-law's sister was waiting at the hospital. My husband was dumbfounded too. I watched my mother-in-law with a cold sneer. I'd already secretly created a burner account right when things started today. I sent my sister-in-law a photo of my mother-in-law's baby bump. I even thoughtfully noted which hospital it was. My sister-in-law stared intently at my mother-in-law's belly. She suddenly charged over and slapped her mother-in-law hard across the face. Before the elderly woman could react, she was knocked to the ground soon. Cold sweat beaded on her forehead as she clutched her stomach, curled up on the ground, moaning in pain. Many onlookers gathered around, pointing fingers and whispering accusations at the daughter-in-law. How could you hit a pregnant woman? Is she carrying her husband's child? That woman is so old already, yet she still has the nerve to give birth. Soon after, the mother-in-law's water broke, and a C-section was no longer necessary. The medical staff immediately escorted my mother-in-law away. Watching this scene, I felt my contraction pains just vanish. My sister-in-law immediately shot an angry glare at my husband. Whose child is your mother carrying? While my brother is breaking his back working overseas, your mother goes and gets pregnant. The crowd went wild. Oh my God, she really is carrying another man's child. That son is so clueless, actually helping his mother cover it up. The husband hung his head in defeat. I worked up my emotions and tried hard to squeeze out a tear, and we had no choice. When we first found out that mother-in-law was pregnant, we confronted her about it. We hoped she would terminate the pregnancy, but she ran away without a word. Now she's back, about to give birth, and she's forcing me to accept this child as a twin to our own. She threatened to jump off a building if I refuse. We can't just stand by and watch her die, she spoke between sobs. Aunt's face was contorted with rage. That slut got pregnant behind my brother's back, and now she has the nerve to try putting the bastard on our family registry. Just wait till she gives birth. I'll tear her apart. After several hours of labor, I successfully gave birth to my daughter. As I looked at my daughter, I silently vowed to protect her for the rest of my life. My mother-in-law had been in labor for a long time but couldn't deliver the baby. They ended up performing an emergency C-section. My husband was worried his sister might do something rash. Using the late hour as an excuse, we sent his sister home first. As she left, his sister shot a furious glare toward the operating room. Soon after, my mother-in-law was transferred to a hospital room. Just like in our previous life, we're sharing a double room. My mother-in-law looked deathly pale and seemed much frilier than in her past life. Ever since we arrived at the hospital, my husband has been running around non-stop. I fell asleep almost instantly when things finally quieted down in the evening. I also closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep. My mother-in-law soon dragged her postpartum body step by step towards the baby. I peeked through half-closed eyes and saw her gritting her teeth with every painful step. Sweat poured down her face, a true testament to a mother's love. My mother-in-law swiftly swapped the infant's ankle bands and rearranged the bassinets where they were sleeping. Even in their previous life, she'd insisted on dressing both children identically. Clearly this scheme had been long in the making. Exhausted, she fell asleep almost as soon as she lay down. Listening to her steady breathing, I rose and quickly switched the babies back to their original places. Let her torment her own children for the rest of her life. My aunt came over at the crack of dawn, bringing chicken soup with her. My husband thoughtfully served me a bowl. My aunt's cooking is truly wonderful. The chicken soup was deliciously light and not greasy at all. My mother-in-law was practically drooling as she watched. She hadn't eaten anything since her C-section. My husband glanced at his mother, then looked at his elder sister with hesitation. Sis, maybe we should give Mom a bowl too. There's no way Iris can finish all this. His sister immediately flared up. Does she even deserve a sip? That shameless woman had an illegitimate child, and now she thinks she can have my chicken soup, even if Iris can't finish it. I'd Rather feed it to the dogs than give any to her. My husband fell into a sulky silence. My mother-in-law shot a venomous glare at my sister-in-law. My husband's aunt just showed up unannounced with a bunch of relatives. Last time around, we kept the pregnancy completely under wraps for my mother-in-law's sake, only announcing the birth after leaving the hospital. My aunt and mother-in-law never got along. Even when they were younger, whenever they meet, it's like two sharp swords clashing. The mother-in-law turned pale at the sight of the crowd, wishing she could vanish into thin air. The aunt immediately shot the mother-in-law a scornful smirk. Well, Mildred really is blessed, isn't she, still managing to have both sons and daughters at her age. The mother-in-law glared at her aunt furiously, but couldn't muster a single word in retort. My husband looked uncomfortable. I cheerfully invited my aunt and the others to see the baby. My aunt really knows how to twist the knife. Mildred, who do you think the baby looks like, and where's that man of yours? How come he's not here for such a big event like childbirth? Honestly, if you're going to have an affair, at least pick someone decent. This is so irresponsible, and now your own son has to take care of you during your postpartum confinement. The aunt suddenly caught on. How could I forget? Tell me now, who is that man you're seeing? I'll go talk to him. The mother-in-law's face was deathly pale, and she remained silent. Her younger sister looked at her with exasperation, frustrated by her unwillingness to act. Sis, speak up already. Tell him to come take this child away right now. You'll have to beg your brother-in-law properly later. We can't let this family fall apart. The eldest aunt spat in disgust. We can't keep this slut in our family. Next thing you know, she'll pop out a bunch more kids for Calvin. We'll have her divorced the moment my brother returns. And Calvin's aunt, my sister already knows. She was wrong. They're at this age. Getting divorced would just make them a laughingstock. Aunt-in-law chimed in. If they don't divorce, are you suggesting Calvin's father should raise this child? We can't let him be treated so unfairly. The elder aunt was seething with rage. In your dreams, our family won't acknowledge this illegitimate child. Once you're discharged from the hospital, take that child and get out. Don't even think about mooching off my brother. Just then, my husband's phone rang. It was my father-in-law calling. My father-in-law's furious voice seemed to pierced through the phone, reaching everyone's ears. My mother-in-law, feeling guilty, didn't dare answer the call. After hanging up the phone, my husband's face turned grim. Seeing this, the relatives all dispersed. After a few days in the hospital, we were discharged quickly. When we got home, we found my aunt blocking the doorway. This shameless woman gave birth to a bastard child. She's no longer welcome in this house. My husband quickly went to stop my elder sister-in-law. Sis, let's discuss this inside. It doesn't look good to argue at the doorway, and Iris shouldn't be exposed to the draft. My aunt snatched the keys, unlocked the door, and shoved me inside. Then she raised her voice shrilly. While my brother is breaking his back working overseas, this slut has the nerve to carry on with another man and even bore his bastard child to help us pay off our loans sooner. My father-in-law went abroad for work with others from our village. He could make $500,000 over 3 years overseas, but couldn't return home during that period. 6. A bunch of neighbors had gathered around to see what was going on. Aunt, tell me, how could I possibly let her set foot in our house again? Gloria, the biggest gossip, immediately spoke up. No wonder Calvin's mom hasn't been seen for months. She was off having a baby. Poor Arthur, working all alone abroad. His wife actually gave him a daughter. Auntie Lee from downstairs chimed in. At her age, she should be ashamed. Back in our day, she'd have been punished for such disgraceful behavior. She's always dressed to the nines. Turns out she's been trying to catch the eye of other men. Many chimed in agreement. Exactly. Arthur is such a decent man. What rotten luck, marrying that kind of woman. And she actually had the nerve to bring the child home. This is absolutely outrageous. My mother-in-law turned pale as a sheet but couldn't muster a word in her defense. My husband's face darkened with anger. Since my sister-in-law refused to budge, my husband had no choice but to quietly send his mother back to her hometown without her knowledge. Otherwise, my husband's elder sister wouldn't have allowed me to go back to the hometown either. I can only imagine how chaotic it must have been with my mother-in-law taking the child back to her hometown, and with my aunt-in-law also in the village. My mother-in-law probably didn't have an easy time either. Without my mother-in-law's interference, I had a very peaceful postpartum month, and I named the child Aurora. May she embrace new beginnings and a bright future. Like the rising sun, I've dreamed countless times of falling down the stairs, straining to make out what that familiar object was. Everything always appears hazy in the dream, leaving me with a nagging feeling that I'm overlooking something crucial. 6 months later, my mother-in-law secretly returned with the child. The child had been running a fever for days, and my mother-in-law feared for her life. They rushed her back home immediately. Looking at my daughter from my previous life, this nearly 7-month-old baby appeared no bigger than Aurora was at 4 months. Her cries were weak and listless. My mother-in-law commanded me with unshakable confidence. Iris, the child is sick. Take her to the hospital. I stared at my mother-in-law, speechless. Mom, I need to take care of the kids. You'll have to go yourself. My mother-in-law gazed at the child in my arms with overflowing affection. Her maternal love was practically spilling over. When I said I wasn't going, she shot me a disapproving look, muttering under her breath all the while, "I told you to take that girl to the hospital. If anything happens, don't blame me later." I pretended not to hear. "Mom, what are you talking about? Mother-in-law, never mind. If she won't go, she won't go. That girl was born under an unlucky star anyway. She'll tough it out." I thought to myself, with a mother like you, no wonder she's unlucky. When my husband came home from work and saw that his mother had returned, his face immediately darkened. Then he discovered our child had a fever, so he rushed the child to the hospital to get medicine. After returning home, he shot his mother a disapproving look. "Mom, didn't we agree you'd stay back in your hometown? What are you doing back here?" my mother-in-law retorted unhappily. I couldn't stand living in our hometown anymore. Everyone was gossiping about me all day long, my husband said. "Well, you brought this shame upon yourself. Of course people are going to talk." My mother-in-law's expression shifted, but what I never expected was the huge surprise she had in store for us. Thump, thump, early in the morning. The door was being pounded with loud bangs. The child was still asleep, and I was worried she might wake up from the noise. I quickly got up to answer the door, a middle-aged woman, about the same age as my mother-in-law. As soon as I opened the door, the woman immediately pushed her way in. She shoved me aside. I was still a bit dazed until I heard her voice, "Mildred, get out here." Hearing the noise, the elderly woman slowly emerged from her room. Upon seeing the visitor, she immediately tried to dart back into the room. The moment she spotted the elderly woman, the other woman charged forward and grabbed her by the hair. I quickly stepped aside to avoid the confrontation. Worried she might accidentally hit me, I thoughtfully swung the half-open door wide. "You fucking bitch, how dare you mess with my husband? Have you no shame? I'll tear you apart today." With that, she started slapping the old woman like crazy. The commotion quickly drew neighbors eager for a spectacle. That's the mistress's wife coming to confront her. This is utterly humiliating. The mother-in-law desperately tried to hide, but the middle-aged woman only grew fiercer in her assault. "You wanted to seduce someone, didn't you? Well, today I'll let you have your fill of it." With that, she went and tore at the mother-in-law's clothes. The mother-in-law desperately covered her chest as her clothes were pulled down to her undergarments. "Oh, Mildred, you're such a closet flirt, still wearing pink at your age." A few people were chuckling under their breath, but no one stepped in to break up the fight. Suddenly, a middle-aged man rushed out and grabbed hold of the woman. It must be Papo's true love, Walter. When Papo saw him, her eyes instantly welled up with tears. "Walter," the middle-aged man looked at the elderly woman with sympathy in his eyes. This only made his wife even angrier. Another slap landed. "How dare you flirt right in front of me, you shameless whore." Walter immediately defended himself. "What nonsense are you talking? Mildred and I are completely innocent." The woman grew even angrier. "Mildred," calling her so affectionately, "innocent? I've seen your flirty texts, 7, sending nude photos at your age, and you call that innocent? Do you think I'm blind? Should I show everyone your photos?" The mother-in-law turned deathly pale. Walter's face also darkened. "Stop talking nonsense. I don't know anything about nude photos. Mildred must have sent them to the wrong person." My mother-in-law snapped back immediately. "You've got it all wrong. I was trying to send that to my husband, Walter's wife. Don't give me that. I'm embarrassed to even repeat those filthy words you used. You kept calling him Walter this and Walter that. So your man is Walter, huh? Shameless harlot." The crowd was eager for drama. "Show everyone the photos. Let's see what Mildred's figure looks like." So this must be Mildred's father. Caught the key phrase, Walter's wife. "What child? You won't believe this. Mildred just had a baby, but her husband's been abroad for over a year. Turns out he'd been trying to pass the child off as his twin, until his sister found out and exposed the whole scheme." Walter's wife immediately shot him a look, and Walter guiltily lowered his head. Walter's wife stormed into the room and saw the child. She immediately started kicking and hitting the man. "You shameless man, our son is nearly old enough to marry, and you went and had a child with another woman. I've worked myself to the bone taking care of this household, and you've been keeping a mistress outside. Let's get a divorce. You can live with this whore." Walter's wife stormed off in a rage. Walter glanced at his mother. I quickly hurried after them. My mother-in-law sat alone on the floor, crying. When my husband came home, he immediately asked what had happened. The moment I saw my husband, my blood ran cold. I can't hear anything else around me now. My husband is wearing the same clothes as the person I saw when I fell down the stairs. The figure by the staircase was my husband, and he just stood there watching me fall without doing a thing. I can't believe it. Why on earth would my husband do this? My husband nudged me. "Honey, what's on your mind?" I snapped out of it and looked at him. When he was speaking to me just now, there was unmistakable impatience in his eyes. Looking back, I can't believe I never noticed. I claimed a headache and retreated to my room, leaving the two of them behind. Back in my room, fragments of overlooked details began surfacing in my mind. He always played the doting father, yet never spent more than an hour with our daughter, always finding excuses to hand her back to me. He always furrows his brow when changing our daughter's diaper. We haven't been intimate since the baby was born. He Keeps saying he wants me to recover fully first, maybe he's already tired of me, or worse, seeing someone else. When my husband came into the bedroom at night, I pretended to cozy up to him. He leaned in eagerly to kiss me, but froze when he saw the stretch marks covering my belly. I caught a fleeting glimpse of disgust in his eyes, but I pretended to stay composed. I shoved him away, said he was going to see our daughter. So he'd already started resenting me that early on. I wonder if my husband knows what his mother did in our past life. Was he involved in my death? I fell asleep around midnight and dreamed again of my brutal death in my previous life. This time, I clearly saw the person at the corner of the stairs. It was indeed my husband. My mother-in-law pushed me down the stairs. My husband rushed over immediately. My daughter parroted what her grandmother taught her. Mommy fell by herself. My husband shot our daughter a furious glare. Then she shot a venomous glare at her mother-in-law. The mother-in-law panicked. She fell on her own accord. This has nothing to do with me. 8. Her husband roared in fury. I saw everything. Why would you do this? The mother-in-law still tried to justify herself. It was an accident. We were arguing and I just lost my temper for a moment. Calvin, I truly didn't mean to do it. You must never tell anyone, or I could end up in prison. My husband held me without saying a word. My mother-in-law grew frantic and knelt down begging my husband. Calvin, I'm begging you, if I end up in prison, I'd rather die. Don't you have someone else? If she's gone, you can be with your mistress. If you're thinking of turning me in, I'll kill myself right now. With that, she made a dash for the staircase. Her husband held her hand. I did have an affair, but I never wanted her to die. She was my wife, the mother of my child. I can't forgive you, and I can't forgive myself either. In my last life, as I was nearing death, my consciousness was hazy, and some memories are unclear, so that's how it all unfolded. In the end, my husband sent his mother away and took care of our daughter by himself. He never remarried. I woke from the dream, watching my sleeping husband. My heart was filled with a whirlwind of emotions. Though he knew nothing about what happened to our daughter, he wasn't involved in my death either. Yet he covered for his mother, and he did cheat. I can't bring myself to forgive a man who's already tainted. I never used to check his phone. I trusted him completely, and now I see it was all a joke. I secretly unlocked my husband's phone. I quickly found the conversation between him and his mistress. The most recent one was from today. Husband, the moment I saw her belly, I lost all interest. She's nowhere near as fit as you are. Her breasts are sagging too. Mistress, Calvin, you're so mean. I am a mother after all. Husband, but you're the irresistible one. You little minx. I'll give you all my love another day. Mistress, oh, stop it. You tease, so when are you going to divorce her and marry me? My husband said, let's wait a bit longer. We can't get divorced while she's still breastfeeding. I picked up my phone to gather evidence. I stealthily returned the phone to its original spot. When I woke up in the morning, I found my mother-in-law packing her things. Me, Mom, where are you headed? My mother-in-law kept her head down. I'm moving out so you two can have your space. Guess she felt too awkward to stay any longer. The whole neighborhood knows his wife came barging in. Mother-in-law, Iris, I haven't found a place to stay yet. Could you look after Lila for me in the meantime? I'll come get her as soon as I find a place. I gave her a cool, detached glance. Mom, you should take her with you. I've got too much on my plate right now. My mother-in-law said with some displeasure. How can 2 children be too much to handle? You don't need to fuss over them too much. Just make sure they're fed, I replied. That's not acceptable. Children aren't pets. They need more than just food. If you're leaving, take them with you. If not, they can stay here. My mother-in-law shot me a glare. After packing up, I made a phone call. Soon after, Walter came to pick her up wearing a mask. His eye was still bruised, probably from his wife hitting him. Are these two being so brazen now? My husband has been coming home later and later. I don't really care anymore. I just want to take good care of my daughter in this lifetime, as long as he hands over his paycheck on time every month. That's all I need. My daughter's uremia in her past life has always been a heavy burden on my heart. I can't bring myself to divorce him right now. If we divorce and he remarries, and our daughter ends up with the same condition as before, he'd never agree to donate a kidney even if he were willing. His new wife would never allow it. I can't take that risk. I need to keep him close as a potential kidney donor. Walter got divorced and walked away with nothing. My mother-in-law moved in with Walter, and they started living together as a married couple. My husband argued with his mother about it several times, but there was nothing he could do. A whole year went by like this. I watched as my husband went through several different mistresses, making sure to gather evidence each time. One day, my husband came home looking deathly pale. 9. Honey, my sister is gone. I froze, tears streaming down my face uncontrollably. In my past life, I cherished and cared for her like a precious treasure for 5 years. The feelings were genuine. I only wanted the 2 children to return to their rightful places. I never imagined she would die. I choked up. Little sister, how could this happen to her? My husband said with a pained expression. Mom, she went out to play mahjong and left the little girl alone sleeping at home. The child woke up looking for her mother and fell out the window. My husband and I went to see our little sister, the tiny child. No longer resembled the little girl I remembered from my previous life. Her sallow hair hung in disheveled strands, a waxy pallor washed over her face, streaked with traces of blood. She bore the unmistakable look of malnutrition. A pang of guilt struck me. Had I made the right choice leaving her in my mother-in-law's care? Maybe I should have kept both children with me from the start. When my mother-in-law saw me arrive, she gave me a look full of meaning, but she didn't seem upset. Walter, however, had red-rimmed eyes and was glaring at her as if he wanted to tear her apart. Mother-in-law had bruises on her face, and she immediately lowered her head when her eyes met Walter's. I wiped away my tears and combed her hair. I washed my face and changed into a pretty dress. Together, we accompanied the child on their final journey. In my daze, I could almost hear the little girl's clear voice calling me mommy again. After returning home, Walter immediately threw all of the mother-in-law's belongings out. The mother-in-law looked panicked. Walter, what are you doing? Walter glared at his mother-in-law with pure malice. I gave up everything for you, and you couldn't even keep an eye on our own child. I told you long ago to stop obsessing over card games and take proper care of the child. I've been killing myself working day and night to give you a better life. Is this how you repay me? The mother-in-law rushed to explain. No. Walter, let me explain. Our daughter, when she saw me there, my mother-in-law immediately fell silent. Walter didn't want to hear her explanations anymore and shut the door right in her face. After knocking on the door to no avail, she had no choice but to leave with us. She came by many times after that, but each time she returned looking utterly dejected. Gradually, my mother-in-law stopped mentioning Walter altogether. My daughter was about to turn 1, so I booked a hotel to host her first birthday party. I invited quite a few relatives. My mother-in-law didn't dare show her face in front of the relatives. I gave my daughter a gold bracelet. Only my husband and I attended the first birthday celebration. Our daughter was showered with gifts and beamed with joy. When we returned home that evening, we were surprised to find my father-in-law had come back. The father-in-law sat on the sofa with a grim expression. The mother-in-law, her face covered in bruises, lay on the floor sobbing. The father-in-law was a decent man who had always treated his wife well. When at home, it was always the father-in-law who handled the grocery shopping and cooking. I never have the heart to let my mother-in-law do any housework. My husband just frowned when he saw his mother like that, but didn't say anything. Dad, why didn't you call me to pick you up? No need to pick me up. I'm not a child anymore. I'm taking your mother back with me tomorrow. You and Iris should focus on building your life together. I was somewhat surprised, as I had assumed my father-in-law would definitely divorce my mother-in-law upon his return. My mother-in-law cried out anxiously, I'm not going back. I want to stay here and live with Calvin and his family. My father-in-law glared at her with a menacing look and raised his hand to strike her. You think I'd let you keep making a fool of yourself here? Get your ass back home with me. 10. The mother-in-law shrank back, hiding in the corner. She didn't dare say another word. The next day, my mother-in-law still ended up leaving with my father-in-law. Later, during our free time, my husband and I would go back to visit his father. Every time we saw her, she had fresh bruises. At first, she would look at my husband with pleading eyes, hoping he would take her away. Her husband would always avoid meeting her gaze. Over time, my mother-in-law's eyes grew increasingly vacant. Occasionally, there'd be a flicker of emotion when she saw our daughter. On my final visit, I gently broke the truth to my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law's eyes cleared, glaring at me with pure venom. Not long after returning home, I received news of my mother-in-law's death. She had drowned herself in the river. Gradually, we reached the time when my daughter from my previous life was diagnosed. I take her for a checkup every year, but this year felt different. The anxiety was overwhelming. When the results came back clear, the weight that had been crushing my chest finally lifted. For once in my life, luck was on my side. I immediately asked my husband for a divorce. At first he was shocked and firmly refused. That's just how men are. They've clearly been tired of you for ages, yet still won't let you walk away. I laid out all the evidence of his affairs over the years right in front of him. He stared at me in disbelief, as if wanting to say something more. Faced with the evidence, his lips parted but no words came out. Our divorce went through without a hitch. Perhaps out of guilt, he left the house to me. The bulk of the family's savings was left to me. Calvin still transfers a quarter of his salary to me every month. For our daughter's support, I enrolled our daughter in kindergarten. I landed a job I'm passionate about. On my days off, I take her out exploring. My daughter absolutely adores the ocean. We love goofing around together on the beach, hand in hand. They walked slowly along the beach toward the distant horizon. Story 2. I don't know how much time had passed. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying in bed unharmed. While Lulu was lying on his back carefree beside me, I actually was reborn too. I was reborn 10 days before the outbreak of the apocalyptic zombie virus. To be honest, I don't want to experience being bitten by zombies ever again. This time, I decided to take advantage of the opportunity of being reborn, find a safe place to stockpile goods and food, and survive until the end of the apocalypse. The plan was perfect, but I didn't have any money. I was really poor. My parents passed away unexpectedly when I was in college. I managed to finish college with a student loan. After Graduation, I worked for an MCN company, earning a monthly salary of 5,000 yuan. After paying the rent and repaying the loan, there was hardly anything left. As everyone knows, a golden retriever is a real glutton. Since I got one, it has made my already poor family even worse off. What? You ask why I keep a golden retriever even though I'm so poor? Because I'm also a human being and I need companionship. And golden retrievers are so great. A dog has so many tricks up its sleeve, waging a battle of wits with it every day can help prevent Alzheimer's. After thinking it over, the only wealthy person I knew was my ex-boyfriend, Milo. Fortunately, when we broke up, I adhered to the principle of leaving some leeway for future encounters, so I didn't delete his contact information. The phone call was quickly connected, and I used a coquettish voice to act cute. Milo. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, and then he said, Everly, did you take the wrong medicine? I couldn't help rolling my eyes. After all these years, Milo was still the same, such a handsome guy, but it's a pity he has such a sharp tongue. He was my senior in college. Despite his mean personality, countless girls were still infatuated with him, but I was the lucky one who managed to stand out among many competitors and win his heart. We had a period of being deeply in love, however, until something happened to my family. I broke up with him and took a year off from school. After that, we never saw each other again. In fact, as an ex-boyfriend, he had never done anything to wrong me. Thinking of the past, on an impulse, I blurted out, Milo, a global viral disaster will break out in 10 days. The apocalypse will come, and zombies will sweep across the entire earth. Do you believe me? As soon as I said it, I regretted it. The end of the world. I was afraid that Milo would surely mock me. I believe you. I'll come to pick you up. Surprisingly, he didn't retort me and believed me so easily. I was stunned. 3. When I saw Milo again, I was still struck by his good looks. His skin was pale, his eyes were as black as ink, his lips were as red as blood, and his temperament was gloomy, just like a medieval vampire walking out of an European and American movie. Milo quietly pulled down his baseball cap a little to avoid my gaze. I realized that my eyes were a bit too eager. I gave a heh laugh and got down to business. Milo, could you lend me 2 million yuan? You can spend my money as you like. Milo took out a black card. My eyes lit up, but unexpectedly, he added, but you have to move in and live with me. Dude, this makes it hard for me not to think too much. Could it be that you want to rekindle our old relationship? He gave me a disdainful look, looking very noble and cold. You said you were reborn, so you have an inherent advantage. I have money. Only by cooperating with each other can we have the greatest chance of surviving. Well, he really is a businessman. Making a reasonable and convincing argument, I quickly moved into Milo's 5,000 square meter villa with Lulu, and this, bullying the weak and fearing the strong, dog, Lulu, was arrogant and unruly in front of me, but when he saw Milo, he became as obedient as a mouse seeing a cat. He stopped destroying things and barking randomly, as if he had become a completely different dog. Milo's villa was located in the villa area in the west of the city, in the suburbs with a low occupancy rate. There was also a metro supermarket 5 kilometers away. The geographical location was very advantageous. Once the zombie virus broke out, there would be few people here, and it wouldn't become a severely affected area. After moving in, Milo showed me around the whole villa. The villa had 7 floors in total, 3 above ground and 4 underground. The 3 floors above ground had ordinary home furnishings. The first floor was the living room, the second floor was the bedrooms, and the third floor was the study. To enter the underground area from the ground, one needed to trigger a very hidden switch and enter the fingerprint password, then the heavy secret room door would open, and it was very difficult for ordinary people to find, and the 4 floors underground were a whole new world. The first underground floor was the living area, with a sunken living room, a wine cellar, 2 kitchens, 6 large bedrooms with different styles. Each bedroom had an independent bathroom, toilet, and cloakroom. The second underground floor was the entertainment area, including a gym, an esports room, a multimedia room, a bowling alley, a sauna room, a library, a heated swimming pool, a golf simulation venue, and a large monitoring room. The third underground floor had been transformed into a large supermarket and a freezer. It was still empty now. Once it was filled, it would be enough for us to eat for a lifetime. There was also a small hospital equipped with medical instruments and equipment capable of performing minor surgeries. The fourth underground floor was the breeding area, divided into an aquatic product breeding area and a crop growth area. Under the irradiation of ultraviolet lamps, fruits and vegetables could be planted even without sunlight. All the doors and windows of the whole villa were made of special materials, the walls were reinforced, and the bulletproof glass couldn't be broken even by a missile. The whole house was soundproof, with solar panels, a pure water treatment system, a high-tech intelligence system, and surveillance cameras covering every corner inside and outside the house without any blind spots. After visiting as a poor person, I was overjoyed. This villa was not only impregnable but also extremely luxurious, and there was no room for any further renovation or upgrade. I asked excitedly, "How did you come up with the idea of decorating the house like this?" Milo lazily explained, "I've just been playing a zombie mobile game recently and got interested in building houses, so I simply renovated the villa." I clapped like a seal. It doesn't matter if you don't have money in the world, but you must hold on to a powerful backer. As long as I stick with Milo, in the apocalypse, I won't just be barely surviving but enjoying life, for, in the apocalypse, people's hearts are unpredictable. For safety's sake, we plan to purchase all the supplies by ourselves. In Milo's garage, there were either luxurious sports cars or SUVs that looked like armored vehicles, which were ostentatious and not suitable for transporting goods at all, so we first bought a small van like those used by cargo delivery services, and then headed straight for Metro. I pointed in the direction of the instant food area and gave orders. Our main goal today is to buy instant food and canned goods. Instant food has a long shelf life, is convenient to eat, and easy to store. It's simply a great companion in the apocalypse. Although there was a kitchen in the villa and we could cook, but who would do it? I could cook, but would Milo dare to eat what I made? It was ridiculous. Even Lulu wouldn't eat my cooking, and for a wealthy young master like Milo who had never done any housework, there was no need to ask. He definitely couldn't cook. Unexpectedly, Milo immediately proved me wrong. He took out a bunch of certificates from his pocket and spread them out like spring festival couplets. He gave me a haughty look and said, "Who says I can't cook?" I took a closer look and saw certificates such as a Chinese pastry chef certificate, a Chinese cuisine chef certificate, a Western pastry chef certificate, a Western cuisine chef certificate, and a Michelin chef certificate. There were all kinds of them. I was silent for 2 seconds and then asked, "Did your company go bankrupt? Have you switched to making fake certificates?" Milo was amused by me and walked straight towards the fresh meat area. I chased after him, following closely and chattering non-stop. "Come on, young master, why did you get so many chef certificates? Do you still want to work as a part-time chef and outcompete us?" Milo suddenly stopped. I couldn't stop in time and bumped into his back. Damn, it was so hard. I touched my reddened nose, with tears in my eyes, and said angrily in a nasal voice, "Can't you say something when you stop? My nose is almost broken. Can you afford to compensate for my original, well-shaped nose?" He seemed a bit helpless, let out a sigh, took away my hand covering my nose, and leaned closer to check. "Where did you get hit? Let me see." His handsome face suddenly magnified in front of my eyes, and a clean and fresh breath rushed towards me. I stared blankly at his eyes. His eyes were dark and bright. When he looked at people expressionlessly, he was like a magnet, making people unable to resist being attracted. My heart skipped a beat, and my face turned red instantly. He looked at me and suddenly smiled with a glint in his eyes. He said something, out of the blue, "I don't want to be a chef, I want to raise pigs." Then he let go of me and went to the fresh meat area. I was stunned for a few seconds. I felt that he seemed to be scolding me, but I wasn't sure and needed to think about it further. There weren't many people in the instant food area, so I started shopping like crazy. 1,000 boxes of self-heating rice, 1,000 boxes of self-heating hot pot, 1,000 boxes of instant noodles in various flavors, 200 packs of snail rice noodles, 100 buckets of hot and sour noodles, 1,000 boxes of cookies, 1,000 packs of potato chips, 500 packs of sausages, 500 boxes of salt-baked eggs, 2,000 cans of various beef, braised pork, and luncheon meat canned goods, 500 bottles of Lao Gan Ma spicy sauce. After buying everything and checking out, the staff member from Metro who helped with the loading was a good-looking young man. He looked tall and thin but had great strength. While loading the goods, he asked me, sweating profusely, "Sister, what are you going to do with so many things?" As soon as I heard this address, I immediately got angry. "I'll give you another chance. What should you call me?" He was startled by me. His eyes were bright and clear, and he looked at me pitifully. "Miss," I nodded, satisfied to be reasonable. Although there is only one character difference between sister and miss, the meanings are very different. Okay, after this incident, the young man didn't dare to say or ask anything more. He silently buried himself in loading the goods and left quickly after finishing. Milo hadn't come back yet. While waiting for him, I placed orders on Taobao, JD.com, and Pinduoduo for 500 bottles of goat's milk, 500 bags of dog food, 1,000 packs of freeze-dried staple food, and 2,000 cans of various meat products. Then I also bought a large number of chew sticks, dog snacks, toys, grooming tools, health products, and various medicines. After solving Lulu's survival problem, I began to wonder whether to take Lulu to the pet hospital to have him neutered and then get A little female dog. In this way, the two dogs could have a platonic spiritual love in the apocalypse. Just then, Milo came back after shopping. I casually asked for his opinion, but he strongly opposed it. Everly, can't you stop being so perverted? Me, perverted? I was dumbfounded and very speechless. Why are you so excited? People might think I'm going to neuter you if they don't know the situation. Milo was choked by my words and tactically changed the topic. Let's load the goods first. He bought 500 gene of beef, 500 gene of pork, 500 gene of mutton, as well as Australian Wagyu beef of grades M7, M8, and M9, and Japanese of 5-grade beef. It just filled the van completely. Looking at the full load of goods in the van, I felt a sense of harvest joy. At the age of 24, I swiped my ex-boyfriend's card and bought a van full of supplies in full. The future looked promising. By the time we had carried all the things to the freezer and the storage supermarket and put them away, it was already late at night. I was so tired that I collapsed on the sofa like a dead fish. When I suggested opening 2 boxes of self-heating rice to eat, Milo looked disgusted. What? Do you want to experience the apocalyptic food in advance? That made sense. So I readily took out my phone. Then I'll order takeout. I'll go cook. I put down my phone and watched the Yen master leave with eager and adoring eyes. Lulu came out stealthily with a frisbee in his mouth. He kept nudging my hand with his wet nose, wanting me to play frisbee with him, but I was really tired. Seeing that I was indifferent, Lulu pounced on me, his fat body weighing more than 70 Gene pressed on me, and I almost spat out blood. He looked at me defiantly, wrinkling his brows and biting his lower lip, as if saying, "Do I really have to look at you with disappointment?" There was no other way. So I had to take him to the large lawn in the yard to throw the frisbee. At first, Lulu would pick up the frisbee and bring it back. But later, he completely slacked off and ran freely. Like a runaway foal, extremely happy. In the past, there was no chance for him to run. Big dogs were always looked down upon wherever they went. I was afraid of scaring people, so I always took him out to pee and poop at dawn and kept him on a leash all the time. Lulu and I had only moved in for less than 24 hours, but our lives were upgrading at a rocket-like speed. While I was sighing with emotion, the dinner was ready. When I entered the dining room, I saw that in just half an hour, Milo had actually prepared a rich dinner, including steak, pasta, cream of mushroom soup, vegetable salad, and Haagen-Dazs ice cream. I couldn't wait to sit down and cut a piece of steak to taste. The moment the delicious juice burst in my mouth, I was almost moved to tears. My road to a laid-back life was getting happier and happier. 9 days before the apocalypse, Milo went out to do some shopping alone in the van, and I stayed at home to receive and unpack the express deliveries, the supplies I bought for Lulu online were arriving one after another. After organizing the supplies, I remembered that in the last life, at the beginning of the apocalypse, the temperature suddenly dropped sharply and it became extremely cold. Half a month later, it became extremely hot, and the weather was very changeable. When it was extremely hot, there was still electricity at home, but the air conditioner was too noisy, so I only dared to turn on the fan and soak in water to cool down when it was extremely cold. I had a lot of quilts at home, and Lulu had a thick coat of fur, so I could hug him for warmth. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to survive the first month. Although Milo's villa was built like a fortress, and the underground power system was independent from the above-ground one, and the intelligence system could control the temperature, in theory, everything was foolproof. But I was a timid person and liked to be prepared for any eventuality. I immediately placed another order for a bunch of supplies to resist extremely cold weather: clothes, 100 sets each of windbreakers, windproof pants, fleece jackets and pants, down jackets, and quick-dry underwear; travel items, 100 sets each of high-top hiking boots, snow gaiters, snow goggles, waterproof and thermal gloves, socks, cold-proof hats, and small backpacks; camping gear, 20 sets each of -20-degree 1,000-gram down sleeping bags, moisture-proof pads, and tents; 100 pieces each of winter pajamas, summer pajamas, slippers, quilts, and 4-piece bedding sets. Then I also bought some miscellaneous items such as lip balms, sunscreens, headlamps, and thermal water cups. I bought dozens of each item, although there were only 2 of us and 1 dog. In case of any unexpected situations, it would be better to be prepared. By the time I finished placing the orders, the express deliveries were almost all received. Looking at the room full of express boxes, I explained to the delivery uncle, I just graduated and started an e-commerce business, so I'm stocking up on some goods. The delivery uncle looked honest and simple, with a dark complexion. When he heard me say this, he grinned. Starting a business is good. You can make a lot of money by starting a business. My son also just graduated this year and is going to take the civil service examination. Looking at his smile, I thought of my father, when my mother just gave birth to me. He didn't like that I was a girl. After being educated by my mother in various ways, he Went to the other extreme and always said that girls were better than boys and that girls could also bring honor to the family. He really wanted me to take the civil service examination. I was the first person in my family to graduate from a 985 university. During that time, he walked with his head held high when going out. I couldn't help but remind the uncle, this epidemic is quite unpredictable. Uncle, you'd better stock up on more food at home as a precaution. The uncle smiled and agreed. I don't know if he will stock up on goods when he goes back, but this is all I can do. I opened all the express boxes and sorted the items. Then Milo came back. I counted the supplies he brought: 8,000 gin of rice, 2,000 gin of flour, 200 barrels of olive oil, 200 barrels of rapeseed oil, 4,000 cases of Evian mineral water, with 24 bottles in each case. 500 bottles of laundry detergent, 500 bottles of body wash, 500 bottles of shampoo, 500 sets of toothbrushes and toothpaste, 1,000 pieces of towels and bath towels, 300 bottles each of salt, vinegar, chicken essence, soy sauce, light soy sauce, sesame oil, cooking wine, and various spices, 1,000 cases of wet wipes and napkins. There were even 500 packs of sanitary napkins and tampons, 200 packs of brown sugar ginger tea. Menstrual pain during my period is my lifelong enemy. I rely on brown sugar ginger tea and painkillers to get through it. Milo was really thoughtful. I threw him a flirtatious look. Milo, come over and help unload the goods, the person said. 6. After unloading the goods, I found a secret room on the 4th underground floor and became curious immediately. When I visited before, Milo didn't introduce this place to me. Was there any secret? Milo couldn't stand my pestering and opened the door of the warehouse. It turned out to be an armory. There were all kinds of firearms hanging on the 4 walls, long and short ones. In the middle were displayed bullets and grenades, as well as some knives, axes, daggers, and other cold weapons. It felt like the armory in the movie Kingsman and looked very impressive. The weapons here are enough to rival a small army, Milo said casually, picked up a pistol and played with it casually. He disassembled and assembled the gun at a very fast speed. Judging from his movements, he was very skilled and professional. I suddenly realized that I actually didn't know him very well. When we were dating back then, what he showed was just the tip of the iceberg of who he was. I felt a little disappointed for no reason. I forced a smile and asked, should I learn how to use a gun from you? In case of danger, I can also help. Milo lowered his eyes and looked at me indifferently. Do you want to learn? To be honest, I didn't. I was just a lazy person with no ambition. I was born under the red flag and grew up in peace, not to mention using a gun to kill zombies. I had never even killed a chicken. During the apocalypse, I only had a head-on confrontation with that zombie once. I still clearly remember the zombie's ferocious and oozing face, and its stinking wide-open mouth that was so close. If it wasn't to save Lulu, I wouldn't have had the courage to fight with it. You don't want to, right? Seeing my silence, he chuckled and rubbed my hair. Then don't learn. I'm here. These words made me want to cry. Since my parents passed away, I haven't felt the warmth of being protected by someone for a long time. I became energetic again and actively suggested, let's transform the yard. Dig some deep pits and set up ambushes. In case zombies come, it can serve as the first line of defense. Milo shook his head. In the apocalypse, what we mainly need to guard against is not zombies, but people. The reason why I didn't transform the yard and the 3 floors above ground is that I don't want to be too conspicuous. Being too special makes us easy to be targeted. What he said seemed to make sense. So I gave up this idea. On the 8th day before the countdown, we went to several wholesale markets, 100 bags of various crop seeds, including Chinese cabbage, potato, tomato, eggplant, coriander, chili pepper, water spinach, cowpea, sweet potato, pumpkin, and wax gourd, 1,000 fry of various fish, including snakehead fish, bighead carp, catfish, and grass carp. We also bought several hundred gin of beef, mutton, chicken, and duck. Then we went to several large seafood markets and bought out all the swimming crabs, green crabs, bread crabs, king crabs, Mexican red lobsters, European blue lobsters, Australian lobsters, Boston lobsters, salmon, and mantis shrimps. Milo, I knelt on one knee, covered my chest with my right hand, and made a standard salute gesture like Hai Ching. You are my god, he sneered. He seemed to be disdainful, but I clearly saw the smile at the corner of his mouth and the pride in his eyes. 7. In the following days, we filled in the gaps and added some supplies in a hurry. The fish on the 4th underground floor had been raised, and some vegetable seeds had been planted. The freezers and the storage supermarket on the 3rd floor were almost full. The small hospital was also filled with various medicines, which could deal with common colds, fevers, bacterial infections, and external injuries such as gunshot and knife wounds. The entertainment area on the 2nd underground floor didn't need to be taken care of as it had been decorated well during the renovation. The living area on the 1st underground floor had all the Necessary daily supplies. There was no need to buy daily clothes and shoes. Each cloakroom was full of big brands like Chanel, Louis Vuitton, and Prada. There were enough clothes for all seasons without repetition, all brand new with the tags still on, among the shoes, except for some high heels. Most of them were comfortable and lightweight sports shoes. The electricity, water supply, and garbage disposal had all been considered during the renovation. I didn't know what technology Milo used. But even if the whole city lost power and water, it wouldn't affect us. Lulu was a shedding monster, so I placed an order for 200 robotic vacuum cleaners and put one in each room of the living area. When one was broken, it could be replaced with a new one. Everything was ready, and there were only 2 days left before the apocalypse. I belatedly remembered something and asked Milo, "What about your parents? Do you want to pick them up?" Milo looked reluctant to talk about it. My mother died during childbirth when she gave birth to me. My father is in City A. Don't worry, he has his own plans. On the last day of the countdown, the temperature dropped sharply and it started to snow. We didn't go anywhere and stayed at home playing ball with Lulu. This was a blizzard across the country, regardless of north or south. On the TV news, the reporters were shivering from the cold and talking about this abnormal weather phenomenon. Experts took turns giving their opinions and trying to soothe the public's emotions, but what they said was all useless nonsense. In the end, netizens were annoyed. The hashtag suggests that experts stop making random suggestions. Hashtag top the Weibo trending list. Through my observation in the last life, I found that zombies were afraid of sunlight and their movements would slow down a lot in the sunlight. At the beginning of the outbreak, the sharp drop in temperature also accelerated the spread of the zombies. Milo and I looked at each other and neither of us chose to post a reminder online. We were not saviors, just trying to keep ourselves alive required all our efforts. That night, I didn't sleep soundly. Around 6 o'clock in the morning, I vaguely heard some noise outside and woke up with a start. Lulu was sleeping in my bedroom. When he saw me sit up, he also stood up suddenly and came over to rub against me, looking at me with his big confused eyes. When I walked out of the bedroom, Milo was standing outside looking at me. Did you hear it too? I nodded. As a reborn person, I could finally play a role. It's not zombies. In the last life, the zombies spread from the subway during the morning rush hour. At around 7 o'clock in the morning, a man was detected with a high fever when going through the security check, and then he suddenly fainted. When he woke up, he started to bite passengers indiscriminately. Everyone was so scared that they fled in all directions, and the city fell in just one day. It was only 6 o'clock now, so it couldn't be zombies. We went out together to check. When we got outside, we heard clearly that it was the barking of a little dog. Finally, in the corner of the yard, we found a little stray dog shivering from the cold. It was probably 2 or 3 months old, with sparse fur, skinny, and a pair of big and bright eyes looking at me pitifully. We decided to adopt it. Mainly I decided to adopt it, and Milo had no objection. We settled the little dog down. On the TV news, there was an urgent broadcast of a vicious stabbing incident in the subway. The host was saying in front of the camera that this kind of creature had no reason, could come back to life after death, and was calling on everyone to stay at home and keep the door closed. On Weibo and Douyin, the topic of the zombie attack had gone viral. The image of the male zombie in the subway station covered in blood and pouncing on people to bite was being widely spread. Milo and I locked the doors and windows, drew the thick curtains, erased the living traces on the 3 floors above ground, and hid in the underground with Lulu and the little stray dog. The apocalypse had really arrived. Lulu didn't reject the little stray dog at all and was quite interested in it. After giving the little stray dog a bath, deworming it, and feeding it some goat's milk, I isolated and locked it up. It was a little male dog. Its mental state was not bad, and there were no external injuries. However, due to limited conditions, I couldn't give it a further examination. Whether it could survive or not depended on its luck. Since it looked like a wrinkled Momo when I picked it up, I named it Momo. Momo's arrival diverted my attention and reduced my apocalypse anxiety. Milo frowned and watched me busy for a long time, then asked a classic apocalypse question. If they were in danger, would you save them? I asked back. Then if I were in danger, would you leave me alone? Do you think I'm that kind of person? In your heart, Milo gave me a fierce look. I pretended to cry. Woohoo, Milo, you're so kind. I've decided that from now on, you're my real father. Milo refused immediately. Thank you, but no need. If it weren't for Lulu, I would have died a long time ago in the last life and couldn't have lasted that long. In the last life, later on, all the food at home was gone. I was a stubborn and cowardly person. I would rather starve to death at home than go out and confront the zombies. Once I fainted from hunger and was vaguely licked awake by Lulu. When I opened my eyes, there was actually a pile of food beside me, probably because I suddenly fainted and Lulu was worried. He opened the door and went out to find food by himself. It was exactly noon, and the sun was shining brightly. The zombies were all dormant and their mobility was slow. Thanks to the genes of a golden retriever, he actually found a lot of food. Lulu's IQ was often erratic, but it was really beyond my expectation that he could get supplies later. I became a bit bolder and would take him out to search for supplies together, and we managed to get through each time without any major trouble until the final accident happened. Have you seen Uncle Shinting's new movie Moon Man? That kangaroo, Gunzi, is just like my Lulu. After Gunzi was left behind, if Duguyu went back to save him, he would definitely die. Why do you think he went back to save him? I babbled on for a long time, and finally came to a conclusion. I guess you've never raised a small animal, right? It's normal that you can't empathize. Milo smiled with a forced expression. I've raised a pig. Does that count as a small animal? Probably. It does. I got up too early in the morning and was sleepy again. After taking a nap, it was already afternoon. While eating potato chips, I went online to check the situation. The zombie virus was spreading rapidly. Weibo was full of distress messages and videos of zombies attacking people. The major media were still trying their best to speak out, telling everyone not to panic and waiting for the government's rescue. They did rescue people, but it was useless. The spread of this virus was too terrifying. Since the villa was in a relatively remote location, there were still no signs of zombies. After eating the last potato chip, I turned off my phone and bounced off to find Milo for food. I heard that he made king crab, and I was so happy. On the third day of the zombie outbreak, the number of people posting on the internet decreased exponentially. There were not many living people left, or maybe everyone had become more cautious and no longer posted casually. Milo was quite busy every day. He was busy working out in the gym, swimming in the pool, monitoring the situation outside, checking the growth of the vegetables, and cooking 3 meals a day. And every day, I would stay in the esports room, the multimedia room, wash the dishes, and command the robotic vacuum cleaners to clean the floor. I couldn't do anything else because I didn't know how. On the 4th day of the zombie outbreak, from the monitoring room, we saw that the villa area had also fallen. There were a small number of zombies wandering around. They were very sensitive to sound and moved very quickly. On the 7th day of the zombie outbreak, Momo's isolation period ended and he was released from prison. After my careful care for a few days, his fur became a little shinier. This little guy was incredibly obedient. Every day, he would come to me for cuddles, lick my palm, and lie in my arms dependently, looking at me with his big eyes. Lulu jumped up and down around him, trying to force him to play, but he didn't pay much attention. When Lulu really annoyed him, he would hide in my arms and whimper. That's right, he was a bit scheming, but I couldn't resist it. My heart melted. I used to not understand why men all liked girls with a bit of a scheming side, and even Milo couldn't escape this. Now I could understand a little bit. 9. On the 10th day of the zombie outbreak, I found that I had gained a little weight. After a moment of reflection, I put on a sports bra and yoga pants and appeared in the gym. My original intention was to work out, but I stunned Milo. He was lying on an inclined bench, lifting dumbbells. His wet black hair fell on his forehead, his clothes were soaked with sweat, and his 8-pack abs were faintly visible. He exuded an explosive hormonal charm. When he noticed me staring, he gave me a half smile and glanced at me with a seductive look. Like a demon, I couldn't help swallowing and ran away shamefully. That night, I had a dream. He pinned me down on the sofa. His black eyes were deep, and I almost drowned in his eyes. His slender fingers gently stroked the back of my neck, tender and hot. I was powerless to resist and felt like I was about to melt. When I woke up, I was scared by this dream. After that, I started to avoid Milo a bit. Unfortunately, he caught me, frowning. He questioned me. What's wrong with you these days? Nothing. It's okay. I stammered and lowered my head, not daring to look at him. Look at me when you're talking. Milo forcefully lifted my chin. I was forced to look at his handsome face. Somehow, my mind went blank, and I suddenly kissed his lips. After kissing, I was stunned, and so was Milo. My mind was like fireworks bursting, incredibly gorgeous. I could still feel the touch of his lips on mine, and I couldn't help licking my lips. Milo's eyes changed, and he stared at me aggressively, like looking at some easily obtainable prey. I was scared and turned to run, but he pulled me back into his arms. Just like in the dream, his slender fingers held the back of my neck, and he pressed me against the wall and kissed me hard. He was like a hungry wolf, and my face turned red. I almost suffocated. After that, we seemed to enter an ambiguous period. We were both pulling, and neither of us was willing to admit defeat. We hadn't played this love game for a few days when a group of unexpected guests pried open the door of the villa and occupied the upper floors of the villa. Among this group of people was a woman I didn't expect, Milo's first love, Clementine. When I saw it from the surveillance video, I was really afraid that Milo would rush out. There were 6 men and 1 woman in that group. They were all muscular men with thick muscles, and each of them was like the Korean action star Ma Dong-suk. They were carrying guns and looked like they were from the underworld before the apocalypse, and they were not to be trifled with. One of them, with a cold and stern appearance, sharp eyebrows and eyes, and regular facial features, unfortunately, had a scar on his left face, looking very menacing. He seemed to be the leader of this group. The group of people checked every corner of the villa separately. They didn't find anything unusual or any food, so they took out their own food and ate it. Then they left one person on guard and the others went to rest. Clementine followed the scarred man, Harrison, into the bedroom together. The others saw this and exchanged a meaningful look, showing a lecherous smile. Milo enlarged the surveillance of that bedroom. Clementine was pushed onto the bed by Harrison. She was extremely delicate, with her long black hair spreading out like a waterfall. She was breathtakingly beautiful, trembling uncontrollably and with tears in her eyes. Looking so pitiful, it seemed that they were about to enter into some restricted level scene. We were all adults, and I wasn't really bothered by action scenes since I had seen them before, but I was worried that Milo would feel awkward. I couldn't help but sneak a glance at him. He seemed calm and indifferent, and I couldn't tell what he was thinking at this moment. Clementine spoke again. Harrison, I've already told you that this place is safe. Please spare me. So the scarred man's name was Harrison. He approached Clementine quietly, and she was so frightened that she let out a series of screams. If you want a woman, I know someone who is 10,000 times more beautiful than me. Her name is Everly, and I know where she lives. I can take you to find her. I was so angry. This vicious and despicable woman. 10. Slap. A clear and loud slap was heard from the surveillance. Clementine covered her face, looking at Harrison in disbelief. How could you hit me? I sneered. She still thought of herself as a young lady, expecting everyone to give her some respect. Harrison grabbed her collar roughly. Don't play tricks on me. If you don't want to be slept with, then think carefully about what you can do. I don't keep useless people. After saying that, he left. Clementine seemed to be stunned, huddled on the bed without moving. Milo was still staring at the screen, and I was annoyed. What? Feeling sorry for her. Sorry for what? He said coldly. She deserves it. I was satisfied with this answer. Half a month after the zombie outbreak, the whole city was in ruins, and there were zombies wandering everywhere on the streets, but all the chaos outside had nothing to do with me. I firmly believed that surviving was the key. The Chinese cabbage planted on the 4th underground floor was growing vigorously. At noon, I had fresh Chinese cabbage, stir-fried beef with chili peppers, cola chicken wings, and seaweed and pork bone soup. There were vegetables and meat, a balanced diet. Much better than the takeout I used to eat before the apocalypse. Lulu was also living a better life than in the last life. Although there was no lawn in the underground villa, the space was large enough. He and Momo chased each other around, getting enough exercise throughout the day. After lunch, I went to the monitoring room again. Goodness, this group of people actually caught more than a dozen zombies and tied them up with iron chains in the yard of the villa, creating a zombie defense wall. Harrison pulled Clementine into the yard and asked, "Well, have you thought it through?" The zombies smelled the smell of a living person on Clementine and went crazy, trying to tear her apart. They let out a series of beastly roars but were held back by the iron chains, only struggling in vain. The accident happened in an instant. One of the zombies actually broke free from the iron chain and pounced on Clementine ferociously. She was too scared to move, so close. Harrison swung his knife and chopped off the zombie's head in one stroke. The zombie blood splattered all over the two of them. Clementine's psychological defense completely collapsed. She said in a trembling voice, I've thought it through, but I only want to be your woman." "That won't do," Harrison said with a playful smile, touching Clementine's face. "I have so many brothers. Come on, Harrison, don't you want me to belong only to you?" Clementine leaned into Harrison's arms and coquettishly, her pale face showing a vicious light in her eyes. "Didn't I tell you? I have a good sister named Everly. We can bring her here for the other brothers, can't we? What if she doesn't listen? If she doesn't obey, just throw her to the zombies." Okay, I'll listen to you." Harrison was aroused by her rubbing and half-heartedly agreed. The two scoundrels went into the bedroom arm in arm. I knew that Harrison and the others couldn't possibly find me, but I was still so angry that my whole body was shaking. It was easy to imagine how miserable my fate would be if I really fell into their hands. Clementine was still as cruel as ever, trying to kill me several times. Suddenly, Milo stood up abruptly and walked straight out. I came to my senses and quickly grabbed him. "Hey, where are you going?" His whole body muscles were tense, his eyes were cold, and there was a hint of killing intent. "I'm going to kill them." I was stunned. He didn't seem to be joking. I quickly soothed him. "Milo, forget it. It's not necessary." Milo looked at me steadily, not saying a word. I forced myself to continue persuading. "Look, I'm fine now. There's no need to." Before I could finish, he pulled me into his arms and hugged me tightly, as if he wanted to crush me into his bones. He was holding me so tightly that his hands were even trembling slightly. At that moment, all my anger dissipated. I hugged him back tightly. 11. With the enemy in the open and us in the dark, I started to slack off again. I no longer went to the monitoring room every day, and my daily routine returned to what it was at The beginning of the apocalypse. I became a happy, lazy person again. I woke up naturally every day. First, I would go to the fourth underground floor to look at the fish and then the vegetables. The greenery was so pleasing to the eye. When I came back from the vegetable field, a delicious breakfast was already waiting for me. After eating and drinking my fill, I saw Lulu lying on the sofa sleeping. I couldn't resist the urge to play with my dog. I pounced on him like a tiger, hugging his golden head and kneading it. I also picked up his stinky paw and smelled it. It had a popcorn smell, which was really addictive. Lulu looked completely resigned to his fate. Milo frowned at me. What kind of hobby is this? I gave him a disdainful look. You don't understand. Little Momo came over, rubbed against my hand, and let out a whimper. I was so charmed that I immediately abandoned Lulu, picked up little Momo, and kissed his little black nose wildly. While kissing him, I also talked to him in a coquettish voice. Mommy's little Momo, you're so cute. Mommy loves you so much. Do you love Mommy? Lulu let out a sigh, looking relieved. Milo frowned even deeper, glanced at Momo, and said 3 words, little schemer. It was really quite funny. When I was bored, I would also go to the monitoring room to take a look. I had to admit that this group of people still had some abilities, with zombies running amok. They still went out to collect supplies every day and had quite a good harvest. Clementine adapted quickly to her new identity. She had the temperament of a vengeful young lady. She wanted to take revenge on all the subordinates who had bullied her before. There was a subordinate named Silas in their team. He was Harrison's right-hand man and was very dissatisfied with Clementine. Clementine didn't take him seriously either, and the two of them were always at odds. Harrison was very ambitious. He wasn't satisfied with the current situation. He called his subordinates together for a meeting ambitiously. In the next few days, we'll clear the zombies in the villa area and then use the villa area as a stronghold to establish a base. Once the base is established, we can recruit more people, expand our team, and become the king in the apocalypse. This Harrison had clearly read a lot of male protagonist apocalypse novels. He had a whole set of ideas. Silas raised an objection. I think we shouldn't be too impulsive. The current supplies are enough for us to last for 10 days or half a month, although there aren't many zombies in the villa area. It's still very dangerous to clear them. Other teams are eyeing us, and we need to preserve our strength. Being refuted by his subordinate, Harrison looked unhappy. Clementine observed the situation and immediately jumped out to sneer. If you're afraid, just say so. Don't make it sound so nice. Silas was a hot-tempered person. He kicked over the tea table in front of him, his veins bulging, and raised his fist to shout, "You bitch, say that again." Clementine threw herself into Harrison's arms delicately. Harrison, look at him, he's trying to rebel. Enough, Harrison roared. Do as I say. Silas was so angry that his head was smoking, but he gritted his teeth and endured it. But before the base could be established, Harrison was carried back by his subordinates. Covered in blood, he had been shot and was in a high fever and coma. When Clementine got the news, her face turned pale instantly. 12. Silas temporarily replaced Harrison as the leader of the team. The first thing he did after taking office was to order people to throw Clementine into the yard to be fed to the zombies. Clementine resisted desperately, shouting hysterically, "You can't treat me like this. I'm Harrison's woman. When Harrison wakes up, he won't let you go." The subordinates hesitated and looked at Silas. In the monitoring room, I also held my breath in front of the screen. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for revenge, but Silas actually backed down. Lock her in the bedroom first. Is that all? Is that all he's got? I couldn't help but complain to Milo. Silas is so useless. He has good combat power. Milo sat in front of the screen calmly, commenting, "It's just that he's not very smart." He was indeed not very smart. Silas actually volunteered to lead the team himself, taking one other subordinate to go to the hospital to find medicine for Harrison. As everyone knew, the hospital was a zombie stronghold, and one basically had to be prepared to never come back. Obviously, the other subordinates weren't ready for this and all lowered their heads to avoid his gaze. Silas was so angry that his face turned distorted. Staying in the villa isn't necessarily safe either. The team that attacked us today could come knocking on our door at any time. It turned out that when they went out to search for supplies this time, they encountered another team. Both sides refused to give in for the sake of the supplies, so they fought. That was when Harrison was shot and injured. In short, that team must be very powerful, because as soon as Silas finished speaking, a subordinate immediately raised his hand and expressed his willingness to go to the hospital with him. The personnel were assigned, and Silas led the team to the hospital. The 3 people left in the villa, 2 were on guard, and 1 was responsible for watching over Clementine. For the time being, everything was calm. There was nothing interesting to watch next. It was all boring parts. I took the opportunity to take a nap. When I woke up, I found that Lulu and Momo were lying on either side of me, sleeping on their backs with their tongues sticking out. They were so cute that it made me smile involuntarily. Unlike the bloody chaos above the villa, it was really happy under the villa, and all of this was because of Milo. I suddenly had a pang of conscience and volunteered to cook a loving dinner for Milo. The ingredient I was best at using was eggs, so I made a whole egg feast, including Fried rice with eggs, scrambled eggs with chili peppers, stir-fried eggs with meat, steamed minced meat with eggs, and egg soup. Milo was also very obliging and ate everything without changing his expression. I smiled and watched him finish eating, and said eagerly, "Is it really delicious? I'll make it for you again next time." Milo glanced at me. "Why did you suddenly want to cook?" "To repay you." I smiled sheepishly. "You've been so good to me. I'm here with my dog, and all my food, clothing, housing, and transportation are provided by you." He interrupted me calmly. "There's no need." I was stunned and lowered my head in embarrassment. Then I heard his cold voice again. "It's only natural to be good to my girlfriend. There's no need for repayment." I couldn't believe it and suddenly raised my head, staring blankly at him. Are you confessing to me?" He had beautiful eyebrows and eyes, looking at me steadily. Suddenly, he smiled. "Silly girl." This unexpected tenderness instantly touched my heart. I threw myself into his arms and clung to him like a piece of chewing gum, acting coquettishly. "Milo, Milo, Milo, do you love me?" "I do. How much do you love me?" He gently kissed my forehead and said in a low voice, "More than you can imagine." I looked into his eyes, fascinated. His black eyes were like a lake, full of deep affection, and I somehow believed him. I stood on tiptoe and kissed his thin lips. He took the initiative, picked me up horizontally, and carried me towards the bedroom. 13. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Milo's smiling face. Seeing this face, all the events of last night immediately came to my mind. I felt a bit embarrassed. "Good morning," he chuckled, his tone ambiguous. "It's not early anymore. It's already noon the next day." I became annoyed and pushed him. "Get out. I want to get up." "Are you sure?" Milo raised his eyebrows and slowly lifted the quilt to get out of bed. My eyes couldn't help but follow him, from his face to his Adam's apple, then to his abs, and finally to a certain indescribable part. But then he put on his pajamas. I felt a bit disappointed. Then I saw him looking at me with a half smile. Falling in love really makes you lose your head. I needed to go to the monitoring room to calm down. In the video, Clementine looked dejected and sat on the ground in a daze, the subordinate responsible for watching over her. A young man who looked like he was only about 20 years old at most, felt sorry for her and shared some of his food and water with her. "Eat something." Clementine slowly looked at him and asked in a daze, as if sleepwalking, "What will happen to me if Harrison doesn't wake up?" The answer was obvious. She crawled and rolled over to the young man's feet, hugging his legs and begging, "Please save me. Silas will definitely not let me go." At this moment, the bedroom door was kicked open, and two bald men responsible for the villa's security came in. Seeing this scene, they laughed. "Lucky you, bald." They kicked Clementine flying with a kick and cursed, "Whore, Harrison hasn't even died yet, and you're already seducing our sixth brother." Clementine lay on the ground, unable to get up for a long time, crying bitterly. Baldby spat hard. "Stop wailing like you're at a funeral. So unlucky." After dealing with Clementine, the two bald men smiled and said to the young man, "Your brother Silas hasn't come back all night. Something might have happened. We need to send someone out to check." The young man was silent for a moment, and then said, "I'll go, but I can't handle it alone. I need another person." The two bald men looked at each other and then at Clementine lying on the ground, and smiled. "Take this woman with you." "I don't want to go. I don't want to go. There are zombies outside. I don't want to go." Clementine screamed in horror, her voice so shrill that it almost pierced the roof, causing the zombies chained in the yard to become restless. I could tell that the young man, in fact, wanted to save Clementine. Staying in the villa meant certain death for Clementine, but if she went out with the young man, there was a glimmer of hope for her survival. As I expected, when the young man found Silas and came back, Clementine didn't show up. The young man's excuse was that she was already dead. 14. Harrison really had a strong will to live. After using the medicine that Silas brought back, he woke up and his injury recovered quickly. The weather suddenly changed from extremely cold to extremely hot. The temperature soared above 50 degrees Celsius. It was unbearably hot, and it was almost impossible to walk outside. It wasn't much better indoors either. The only good news was that the zombies were not as difficult to deal with as before. The zombies tied up in the yard were exposed to the sun and almost entered a semi-dormant state, not moving at all. Although the water and electricity in the city had been cut off for a long time, the villa had two independent water and electricity supply systems. One was responsible for the above-ground floors of the villa, and the other was for the underground fortress of the villa, so Harrison's team could still live quite comfortably with the air conditioner on every day. They only went out to search for supplies briefly every morning, for a maximum of 2 hours a day, and then they got off work on time after going through this great disaster. Harrison's ambition to expand his territory had long been extinguished, and he became someone who just wanted to survive. In this way, half a month passed peacefully, and then the villa was surrounded. The people who came were exactly the team that had injured Harrison before. I also saw a familiar figure, Clementine. She really wasn't dead and had become glamorous again. She stepped forward to negotiate with Harrison. "Harrison, my boss said that as long as you give up this villa, he'll spare your lives." The villa was impregnable and had an independent water and electricity system. Who wouldn't be jealous of it? Harrison was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged. You're talking complete nonsense. Then there's no room for negotiation. Clementine laughed coquettishly. Her expression turned cold, and she waved her hand to give orders. Surround them, as the boss said. There were more than a dozen people in this group, and they immediately surrounded the villa tightly, intending to starve the people inside to death. Harrison and the others were furious. They had lived too comfortably in the past dozen days, and there was almost no food left in the villa. They had to go out to find supplies. They endured like this for a few days. Harrison felt that they couldn't just sit and wait for death any longer. Jasper stood up again and proposed to break through the siege at night. They would release the zombies in the yard, use those zombies as a cover, and rush out in the chaos. Zombies attacked indiscriminately, without distinguishing between friend and foe, but they didn't have any other options now. It was an extremely tragic battle. The zombies in the yard hadn't eaten for a long time. Their hunger and ferocity were beyond that of ordinary zombies. The team blocking the outside was caught off guard, and more than half of their members were lost in an instant. The two sides exchanged fire, and the gunshots attracted zombies from several kilometers away. Milo frowned. These idiots. He sent out a drone to check. The image detected by the drone really shocked me. A large number of zombies were rushing towards the villa area frantically. They were so dense that they formed a zombie tide. To be honest, whether in my previous life or this life, I had never seen so many zombies. They were running at an extremely fast speed. In at most 10 minutes, the villa area would be overrun by these zombies. The battle in the villa also reached a fever pitch. There were only 4 people left in the opposing team. Here, the Bald brothers were already dead, and both Harrison and Silas were seriously injured. Clementine and Jasper were hiding in the kitchen. The zombies outside the door were banging on the door, frantically, almost about to break it open. Jasper looked calm. He looked up at the ventilation duct on the ceiling. Step on my shoulders, open the ventilation duct, and climb up, then pull me up. Clementine climbed up while crying. When she reached up to pull Jasper up, the door was broken open by the zombies. Clementine screamed and immediately let go of her hand. Jasper fell down. Jasper was surrounded by zombies, but his expression didn't show the slightest bit of panic. He held a kitchen knife in each hand and chopped at the zombies with all his might, as if cutting watermelons. Clementine was crying loudly in the ventilation duct. Jasper kept chopping and said, I don't blame you. There were too many zombies to chop. He numbly waved his arms, mechanically repeating the chopping action. He looked up at Clementine. On his face full of blood, there was a naive, boyish smile. I can finally rest well. The kitchen knife clanged and fell to the ground. The zombies swarmed up and devoured him completely. The ground was shaking, and the zombie tide was surging. The villa area completely fell. 15. Clementine hid in the ventilation duct until daytime. After the sun rose, the zombies outside all entered a semi-dormant state. She crawled out along the ventilation duct. Finally, when she was about to escape, she was shot and killed by Harrison. Harrison was immediately torn apart by the zombies. In the entire villa area, no one survived. Spring passed and autumn came. Above the fortress, zombies were running amok. Below the fortress, Milo and I, with Lulu and Momo, cherished every day and lived a plain and fulfilling life. I learned to dance and successfully got rid of the fat that Milo's delicious cooking had made me gain. Lulu finally stopped destroying things. During this period, he got pancreatitis once. I was so scared that I cried. In the end, Milo cured him. Since then, Lulu has liked to stick to Milo more than me. I found that Milo was like a god. There was nothing he couldn't do, from basic life skills like cooking and repairing to treating people and dogs, shooting, and fighting. He was omnipotent. One day, I was snuggled in his arms watching a movie. In the middle of it, I suddenly asked him, Are you also reborn? Milo raised his eyebrows. Is it that obvious? You just noticed. I noticed a long time ago. Okay, I said stubbornly. So when did you get reborn? When you broke up with me so early. I jumped up in surprise. So when I broke up with you, you didn't even try to keep me, because there really wasn't any time. I had to learn all kinds of skills and prepare for the apocalypse. He pulled me back into his arms again and gently kissed me. You said that if the apocalypse came again, you hoped you could lie back and relax. I was confused. I remembered saying that. It was in my previous life. At that time, my family was out of food and my stomach was growling. Hugging Lulu, I was crying and making a wish, hoping to find a powerful backer and be able to relax. But how did Milo know? I pressed him. Tell me the truth. Are you hiding something from me? Milo pondered for a moment. It's a long story. Never mind. You can take your time. I have plenty of time. Milo began to tell the story. In the previous life, just like this life, at the beginning of the apocalypse, Clementine wanted to play the game of showing true love in adversity. She secretly ran out to find Milo but encountered Harrison and the others on the way. To save herself, she brought Harrison's group to Milo's villa. Milo became a member of Harrison's team in order to negotiate with them. When the apocalypse came, the person Milo was most worried about was me. Clementine found out about this. Out of jealousy and resentment, she began to instigate Harrison to come to my house to find me. But every time, Milo stopped them. That's why I was able to survive for so long in my previous life. In the previous life, Harrison and the others were also attacked, but he wasn't injured. Milo blocked the bullet on purpose. He used a bitter trick to gain Harrison's trust. Harrison was really touched and regarded Milo as his most trusted person. After Milo was shot and fell into a coma, his soul drifted to my house. Somehow, he switched bodies with my golden retriever, Lulu. In the body of a golden retriever, he accompanied me, helped me find food, and prevented me from starving to death. Later, when his gunshot wound healed, the body switching was no longer stable. Sometimes when he opened his eyes, he found himself in the body of a golden retriever, and sometimes he found himself back in his own body. Just as he was thinking about how to solve this problem, Clementine found a way to send him away and brought Harrison to my house together. She deliberately lured Lulu out with food, alarming the zombies. In the end, I died in the hands of the zombies while trying to save Lulu. At the last moment of my life, Milo's soul switched back to Lulu's body. He tried his best to pull the zombies away, but it was in vain. He watched helplessly as I died in front of him. That's why he said Clementine deserved it. He hated her to the core. 16. After Milo finished speaking, I was crying uncontrollably. So whether in the previous life or this life, my peaceful days were all because he was shouldering the burden for me, because I wanted to relax. After being reborn, he learned all kinds of skills and built a solid underground castle for me so that I could relax with peace of mind. Only then did I finally understand how much weight his words, "I love you more than you can imagine," carried. Milo sighed and gently wiped my tears. "I knew you would definitely cry, so I didn't want to tell you." I wailed even louder. He held me helplessly and patted my back gently to comfort me. "It's okay. Cry if you want." Meeting Milo in this life was my good fortune. Year after year, in the 5th year of the apocalypse, the extreme weather gradually returned to normal. The number of zombies was also slowly decreasing. Some zombies fell and never got up again. Gradually, there were signs of humans walking on the streets. It was said that coastal cities had developed a vaccine, and water, electricity, and the internet had been restored. More and more survivors were speaking out on social networks. The whole society was gradually returning to order, and Milo and I, with Lulu and Momo, walked out of the underground castle for the first time. A full 6 years had passed, and they had all grown from puppies to mature and steady dogs. The villa was overgrown with weeds, showing a lush green. A new world was being reborn. Story 2. In order to avoid zombies, I took refuge in a remote prison. The old county sheriff, clutching a machete, looked back at the relentless zombies pursuing him and cried out desperately to me, who was inside the prison walls. He had embezzled public funds and enriched himself for years, and with the apocalypse upon us, he brutally killed unarmed villagers for a bit of food. Unaware that I had long since seen through his deeds, I watched coldly and said to him, "Go to hell, old man." I stood on the rooftop, gasping for air, watching the endless stream of zombies emerging from the stairwell behind me. Looking up at the dilapidated city below, my eyes filled with relief. Then I fell forward, ending my 2.5-year flight from the apocalypse. Suddenly, I jolted awake in bed. What the hell? Didn't I just jump off a building? I couldn't believe my surroundings, familiar yet strange. After 2.5 years of fleeing, I had almost forgotten what home looked like. Then I walked into my bedroom, picked up my phone to check the time, and turned to look out the window at the bustling cityscape. Trembling, I climbed out of bed, washed my face with cold water in the bathroom, and stared blankly at my youthful face in the mirror. I had returned to 10 days before the zombie outbreak. I gradually calmed down and began to think about how I could avoid the tragedies of my past life. Even a horse stumbles, and people make mistakes. Constant fleeing would inevitably lead to accidents. Building a home for the apocalypse was the far-sighted approach, but where would the money come from? All I had was the living allowance from my parents and an apartment of 120 square meters in the city center, originally intended as my marital home. With the current property price of $40,000 per square meter in the city center, selling the apartment would only net me $4.8 million, but $4.8 million was not enough to build an impregnable home for the apocalypse. Asking my parents for money, telling them, "Mom and Dad, the apocalypse is coming in 10 days due to a zombie outbreak, sell the house and follow me," knowing my dad, he'd likely scold me fiercely and then have me checked into a psychiatric ward. Forget them. I even thought I was crazy too. Just then, my phone dinged with a Notification, I checked it. World Cup first match. Qatar 0-2 lost to Ecuador. It was the eve of the zombie outbreak during the last World Cup, and tomorrow, a game considered one of the biggest upsets in football history was about to take place. Time was short. I had to act quickly. I contacted the owner of a fully furnished luxury home, my only demand being to sell my apartment for cash by tonight, by evening. I had received over 4 or 5 million from the sale and checked into the Hilton with just a few pieces of clothing. Having not eaten barbecue in 2.5 years, I decided to go downstairs to gather my thoughts over some skewers. After ordering, sitting at the table, I began to think about where I should build my home for the apocalypse. Somewhere isolated, far from the city center. Where could that be? I overheard two guys at the next table talking about the World Cup. Hey, did you hear? Some guy borrowed money to bet on the games and lost everything in one go. Ended up on the rooftop. And not just that, I heard he borrowed a ton of money, several $100,000, just hoping for a big win. No wonder he ended up on the rooftop. If he couldn't pay that back, he'd probably end up in jail, right? Well, not necessarily in jail. Unintentional words that sparked an idea. The word jail made my eyes light up. What place is isolated from the world that would be a prison? Remote and sparsely populated, easy to defend and hard to attack. I wanted to thank that guy and called out, "Thanks, man." Tomorrow, Senegal 0-2 Netherlands, USA 1-1 Wales. The two guys turned their heads, surprised. "Really, mate? Are you a betting god or something?" Ignoring them, I opened my phone, bet all 4 or 5 million on Argentina versus Saudi Arabia 1-2, with Saudi winning. The guys at the next table stared in disbelief, asking, "How many dishes, mate?" I looked at the untouched table and smiled. I haven't even started eating yet. 3 the next day, with 8 days left until the zombie outbreak. I spent the night researching and found an abandoned prison in the outskirts of J City, nestled among mountains, sparsely populated, and conveniently located at the junction of 3 provinces, making it ideal for transportation and supplies. It was the perfect prison destined to become my home. I packed a few clothes, bought a train ticket, and set off to inspect my future home, or rather, my future fortress. Upon arriving at the high-speed train station, the first thing I did was head straight to the nearest used car market and rented a van for half a month, convenient for transporting goods and travel. After driving for over half an hour on a bumpy rural road, I arrived at the entrance of this abandoned prison. Despite its remote location, this prison actually belongs to a small county in the suburbs of J City. Finding the gate locked, I drove to the county government office to meet the county head, who was lounging under a space heater. When he saw me at the gate, expressing an interest in the abandoned prison, he quickly got up to greet me, enthusiastically shaking my hand and providing information. The county head insisted on a minimum lease of 5 years for the prison. Eventually, I rented the rights to use the prison for 5 years at the price of 3 million, along with a generous red envelope for the county head, hoping for some conveniences in other areas. After getting the keys from the county head, I entered the long-neglected prison. The prison spans over 400 acres with a perimeter of approximately 64 meters, shaped like a rectangle. The prison buildings were not too old. 2 5-story dormitory buildings were in fairly good condition, though the grounds were overrun with weeds. After a brief tour of the prison, I returned to the county town, checked into a small hotel, and asked the owner for some paper and a pen, planning to sketch out a simple layout for the prison in my room that evening. Just then, my phone pinged with the results of tonight's soccer match between Saudi Arabia and Argentina. Unsurprisingly, Saudi Arabia won 2-1. Online comments exploded, claiming it was one of the biggest upsets in soccer history. The top comment under the video mentioned a fellow diner the night before the match had predicted the scores of the next 2 games and even placed a 4 or 5 million bet on Saudi winning 2-1. At the time, it seemed like a drunken bet, but now it was clear what had been missed. Soon after, I received a large transaction in my bank account amounting to over 280 million. Although I was somewhat prepared, seeing such a life-changing amount of money in my account still felt surreal, for, with only 7 days until the zombie outbreak, time was running short. The next day at dawn, I contacted several construction crews. With a tight deadline of about 5 days, I had to multitask to ensure the project was completed before the catastrophe. What? You have other ongoing projects. My deadline is too tight, the location is too remote and inconvenient, my demands are too excessive. Money talks, and I was ready to offer a price you couldn't refuse. For construction convenience, I decided to focus on the interior of the prison first and leave the perimeter work for last. The 2 dormitory buildings were separated only by a narrow path, and I decided to connect them with a mezzanine in the middle, making it appear as if it was originally one building. At first glance, one wouldn't notice the mezzanine hidden between the cells on either side of the buildings, my actual home would be accessed through a secret door in one of the cells, leading to the mezzanine and then down to the basement via a vertical ladder. Most of my supplies would also be stored in the basement. Food was the least of my worries, as the stockpiled and cultivated supplies in and above the basement could sustain my parents and me indefinitely. My concerns were water, electricity, and medical supplies. The south side of the prison buildings, where the terrain was higher and sunlight abundant, was free from obstructions, perfect for setting up a solar panel area. The J-City region received ample sunlight, with an average direct radiation of about 1194 kilowatt-hours per square meter, and the inclined radiation wasn't much different at about 1243 kilowatt-hours per square meter, with an average of at least 6 hours of sunlight per day. I wasn't sure how many solar panels to order, but I opted for the better more than less principle. On the phone, the CEO of a tech company assured me while metaphorically patting his chest. A 10,000 square meter solar panel area could accommodate 1,000 kilowatt hours of panels, totaling 200 pieces of 500 watt panels. Each 500 watt panel could generate about 2 kilowatts or 2 kilowatt hours of electricity per day, meaning the solar farm could provide 400 kilowatt hours daily, and the tech company's CEO cheerily stated the setup, including accompanying frames, wires, inverters, batteries, and more, would only cost $20 million, with free installation, testing, and unlimited after-sales service included. I muttered to myself, that's expensive, forget about after sales, you probably won't be able to make it by then, but free installation is nice. I paused then added, you should also have a 3,000 kilowatt diesel generator, right? I'll take 2 sets of such facilities plus 1 high-capacity imported diesel generator for $45 million, with an extra $1 million for you if you can complete the installation within 3 days. Hearing this, the owner's jaw dropped, and he stopped calling me sir, instead saying, brother, don't worry, give me 2 days and I'll have everything sorted out clearly. 5. On the 4th day, with only 6 days left until the zombie outbreak, the issue of electricity had been temporarily resolved. Normally, 1 set of solar panels would generate power, then a backup generator was prepared in case of damage so it could be replaced easily, even without sunlight. The diesel generator could be used for emergency power supply. However, the high-power diesel generator posed a problem. Though it produced an impressive amount of electricity, it also consumed a significant amount of diesel, up to 1,000 liters an hour, which was all a person could purchase. I immediately drove to the entrance of the county committee's courtyard and found the county mayor. Upon getting out of the car, upon seeing me, the county mayor stood up with a smile, saying enthusiastically, young boss, I've been thinking about you these past few days. I thought to myself, he's probably worried about the payment, but kept a straight face and replied, brother, wasn't it just the day before yesterday that we met? It feels like a long time since yesterday. Today, brother, I'm here to pay the rent. Hearing that I came to pay, the mayor's smile deepened as he said, oh, brother, talking about money diminishes our relationship. While saying this, he handed me a slip of paper with a bank account number on it from his desk. I could tell it was the mayor's personal account. With a twitch of my lips and without much conversation, since it's tough to fight local snakes, I understood that this kind of person was just after money. I transferred the funds. After the transfer, I smiled and said, brother, I need a favor. In the next few days, I'll have a shipment of supplies and a construction team arriving, and I've ordered a diesel generator which will need a lot of diesel. Can you help me out with this? The mayor looked troubled and hesitated. Little brother, this is... Seeing he didn't outright refuse but hesitated, I immediately knew what this cunning fox was thinking. I coldly chuckled internally and said, brother, rest assured, since I'm asking for your help, I wouldn't let you lose out. Let's do this. I'll buy diesel from you at 10,000 yuan per ton as a gift for our meeting. The mayor's eyes flickered with covert delight, though he still looked somewhat troubled, finally whispering, since we hit it off so well, and since you've asked, I can't refuse to help. Consider it done, and wait for my good news. We then exchanged several compliments. Suddenly, I remembered that my fish ponds were still waterless, so I mentioned to the mayor, brother, I have 2 fish ponds that need water. I plan to draw water from the nearby river. That should be okay, right? Seeing that it didn't require his labor, the mayor was happy to do me this favor. With a grand gesture, he said, brother, are you underestimating me? Go ahead and draw the water. I've got your back. No one will object. Then, the mayor, chatting with me, sensed something was amiss and asked what I was planning with both the fish ponds and the generator. I decided to teach this greedy fox a lesson. With renewed vigor, I lowered my voice and said, brother, I'm planning to start a rural retreat right here, especially since the pandemic is hitting hard, you know. I haven't shared this because many places aren't accessible or convenient for others. Brother, don't look into things You shouldn't. Don't ask about things you shouldn't. Too much knowledge might be problematic for you. The mayor paused, looking serious and confused. A rural retreat? Who would invest millions to start one in the wilderness? Could it be? Seeming to suddenly realize something, he covered his mouth and tentatively pointed upwards. Is it from higher up? I glanced at him and nodded slightly, indicating higher up. Realizing his guess was correct, the mayor was visibly shocked and stammered. Then, seeing his reaction, I internally sneered. I was afraid you might not live to spend it. Outwardly calm, I reassured, brother, don't worry, just keep the money, no one will say anything. Afterwards, the mayor escorted me out, unable to hide his emotions, repeatedly saying, brother, remember to put in a good word for me. I waved him off. Enough, no need to see me out, best not to be seen, I'm off. 6. Considering safety factors, all construction units came from other areas to avoid any potential backlash in case of a zombie outbreak. In the afternoon, the construction teams arrived one after another. I gave each worker from the various units a red envelope containing 10,000 yuan to boost their morale, promising that the quicker the completion, the larger the bonus. Although construction teams usually secretly drill wells to cool their equipment, I still approached their leaders and gave them 50,000 yuan, instruct them to drill 2 additional wells, one in the middle of the fish pond to the north and another on the east side of the prison tower. My plan for the basement spans 4 levels, all equipped with moisture-proof, waterproof, and even earthquake-resistant rooms, including a ventilation system, all handled by a professional construction team. The first level has relatively good ventilation, and I plan to use it for living quarters, designated for myself, my parents, my sister, and it includes 3 bathrooms. The water in the bathrooms is sourced from groundwater, while the water for bathing is connected to the solar water heaters on the roof to save energy. The water heaters will not be on all day, they will be turned on in advance when needed. Wastewater will be lifted into the main sewage pipeline to the ground septic tank, which can be reused for watering and fertilizing vegetation and vegetables. The second level will be used entirely for storage, including a large amount of daily necessities, clothes for every season, fire extinguishers for emergencies, enough napkins and toilet paper to last us decades, and several sets of dishes and cooking utensils. The owners of the daily goods and home appliance factories treated me like a cash cow, selling me all sorts of everyday items, whether I needed them or not. Overstocking is better than understocking. It didn't cost much anyway, and I couldn't be bothered to argue, so everything was stored in the warehouse upon arrival. I also bought some skincare products for my sister as recommended on Little Red Sweet Potato, like Helena and SK2, just a symbolic amount, enough until they expired. Skincare products can expire if bought in excess. Afterwards, planting some aloe will do just as well. I didn't buy any makeup, after all, aside from us. Zombies wouldn't appreciate it. The third level has been constructed with 3 cold storage rooms, where all perishables are stored in freezers. Usually just the first cold storage room is in operation. It stores large quantities of fresh and frozen meats like lamb, beef, and pork, which the prison does not breed, and even a lot of popsicles and ice cream. The other 3 rooms store a large number of spare photovoltaic panels and various replaceable electronic components. Another room serves as the control center, monitoring all of the prison's surveillance equipment. This is where most of the prison's electricity is used, but fortunately, we don't have many other places that need electricity. I believe we will live quite comfortably in the first year, even enjoying fresh meat and ice cream. The 4th level is used to store a batch of diesel from the old county mayor, and due to the volatile nature of diesel, I specifically placed it on the 4th underground level. It's worth mentioning that because of the profitable price difference and the mayor wanting to please me, he managed to get a lot, but I never expected this old thing could manage to get 100 tons of diesel, totaling 588 barrels. The thought of so many barrels stored below is somewhat frightening. Therefore, to avoid fire hazards, I deliberately did not place the kitchen underground, but instead, in the southwest corner of the prison, in the dining room. The stove was also specially prepared with both electric and wood-burning options, generally using wood for cooking large pots, and switching to electric when there is a surplus of power. Of course, living underground for a long time is not beneficial for one's physical and mental health. The roof has good lighting, and I have transformed part of the ceiling into frosted skylights. Several cells have been converted into 2 bedrooms, with the difference being that the bedroom doors open towards the inside of the mezzanine. Also, to better sustain long-term survival, entertainment is quite important. I built a separate small building in the northeast corner of the prison building, equipped with a pool table, mahjong table, and television. Specifically for our family's daytime entertainment and rest, I have saved many TV shows, variety shows, and movies on USB drives, like Bright Sword, The Legend of the Condor Heroes, Heroes of Sui and Tang Dynasties, which my parents love to watch. I also organized 1 terabyte of learning materials for myself, believing in lifelong learning, as a man remains youthful until his death, to avoid disturbing my parents' rest. I converted one of the prison cells on the other side into an entertainment room and ordered several PS5 Switch consoles, top-end computer peripherals, and a large number of single-player game resource cards and discs, such as Give Him Love 5, Tears of the Kingdom, Kirby of the Stars, and others. Believe me, by the time I complete all these games, my life will probably be nearing its own game over. I can't help but look forward to the days after the apocalypse, free from urban noise, 996 work schedules, KPIs, car loans, housing mortgages, and without a wife. Oh, I didn't have these before the apocalypse either, so no worries there of the east side of the prison building is a planting area, growing common crops such as eggplants, potatoes, radishes, rice, and sweet potatoes. I've ordered a large batch of vegetable and fruit seeds for all seasons. If stored properly, we can enjoy seasonal fruits every year without needing to plant too much, just enough for the four of us to eat. Of course, I wouldn't know how to manage these things without proper planning, but I've made sure everything is set for our long-term survival. My mother, as a contemporary independent woman from the countryside, has always found farm work to be second nature, having grown up with it. In recent days, I've been constantly on the lookout for information from the outside world, and one day, a viral online incident about a rabies attack caught my attention. In the video, a man was seen furiously biting a woman, and despite the efforts of bystanders pulling and kicking, they couldn't separate them until the police arrived and subdued the man with a stun gun. The man fell to the ground convulsing, and although the woman's face was blurred in the video, it was clear from the footage that her neck was severely mutilated. Shortly after, the woman was taken away in an ambulance, and the man was handcuffed by the police. 5 minutes later, the video was taken down, and no related news could be found through search keywords. I know a lesser-known fact. Humans infected with rabies do not exhibit symptoms of attacking others. The urgency of constructing the base is pressing, and I'm hesitant about whether to call my parents and sister over sooner. I spent a sleepless night and sent another payment urging the construction crew to speed up the work. After the apocalypse, the best pastime I could think of was fishing, which I rank as the second most engaging activity, and no one dares claim the first. The north side of the ground-level prison building was primarily intended for a fish pond, firstly as a main source of protein, and secondly because both my dad and I love fishing. I transformed the activity area on the north side of the prison into 2 fish ponds, each covering about 10 acres and 2 meters deep, separating freshwater fish from aggressive carnivorous fish, one pond for rod fishing and the other for lure fishing enthusiasts. For this, I specifically called my father for some expert advice over the phone. My father suggested planting gramineous plants around the shores and aquatic plants and duckweed in the water to promote the growth of microorganisms and plankton. The fish stocks would be managed by breeding grass carp, which could feed on duckweed, aquatic plants, and plankton, and their feces, in turn, would serve as high-quality bait for silver carp and bighead carp. The upper layer fish, silver carp, and bighead carp, would grow by consuming the grass carp's feces and the remaining plankton. The bottom layer would involve breeding carp and crucian carp, which would feed on the residual feces and leftover food from the upper layer fish. This setup creates a natural cycle, maximizing the use of bait and purifying the water, achieving optimal benefits. Good water quality is essential for sustaining fish, and considering the size of the pond, I also plan to order 100 pounds of snails to help purify the water. On the water surface, I decided to add an additional 20 insect-attracting lights, averaging 1 per acre. These lights consume little power and come with small solar panels for daytime charging and nighttime operation. Additionally, I purchased 6 bottom-mounted micropore aerators, but given the fish density, short-term oxygen depletion was not a concern. I bought them just as a precaution. When my father asked why I needed this information, I casually brushed it off, saying, "A friend is thinking of starting an agritourism venture and needed some advice." My father didn't press further, and after exchanging a few pleasantries, I ended the call. The construction crew worked around the clock, driven by sufficient funding. The old prisons, cafeteria and other unnecessary structures were demolished. Critical cells and iron bars were all reinforced and renovated, and all moldy walls were repainted. During this time, I also contacted the former county chief to request some medicines for the agritourism venture. The next day, he delivered various common household medicines. Although it wasn't much, it was enough for our short-term needs. As medicines also have expiration dates, in addition to the medicines, the county chief also brought me a dozen local chickens and ducks, claiming they were genuine and would definitely be useful for my agritourism venture, though I wasn't sure if they were from his own farm. Seeing the many workers and piles of materials being transported into my prison facility, the county chief seemed even more convinced and didn't ask for payment, simply handing over the goods and leaving. I had planned to collect some goods from the village later, but this saved me the trouble. The local chickens and ducks were mostly free-range, requiring just some vegetable leaves for feeding. I placed the chickens and ducks in a fenced area on the east side of the prison building, planning to slaughter a few each evening to provide additional meals for the workers at the construction site. 2 days passed, and there were only 4 days left until the zombie outbreak. The solar and diesel power stations to the south were fully installed, and spare photovoltaic panels and other electrical components were stored in the underground level 3 storage room. Various supplies had also arrived, including the requested fish fry. True to the saying, broad waters raise large fish, I ensured the water had sufficient oxygen content and didn't order too many fish. The rod fishing pond received 3,000 grass carp, 500 silver and bighead carp, and 1,000 carp and crucian carp. The lure fishing pond also had a modest stock of 2,000 snakehead and bass. In addition to fish fry, the 2 fish ponds were also stocked with many mature fish, as it takes a year or 2 for the fry to grow. The perimeter walls and wire mesh were reinforced and inspected again, with surveillance cameras installed every 50 meters, and the entire wire mesh was electrified. I kept a close eye on my phone, monitoring the information on it intensively these past few days. Yesterday, a video went viral online with the caption, "Hallucinating addicts on the streets of New York walking like zombies." Another video, posted by a netizen, was terrifyingly scary. It showed my older brother, who had been feeling cold since the day before yesterday, writhing, twitching, and rolling crazily in bed today. Eventually, he lunged at the person filming the video while bent over. The camera then spun around on the ground, and finally, it was picked up by his younger brother, who ran outside, continuously shouting "brother." In the violently shaking final footage, you could vaguely see the older brother drooling and roaring as he chased after his younger brother. Rumors began to spread online that the virus strain of the pandemic was mutating, with the new strain showing increased rates of infection, mortality, and severity of symptoms. The basement construction was nearing completion. I checked the electricity, ventilation, groundwater, and all surveillance equipment once more, and everything was running smoothly. I was always worried about potential accidents with the construction, but fortunately, we hired a professional top-tier team and paid them well. Excluding the initial deposit, a total of $31 million was paid for the remaining construction costs, which was far above the normal rate. However, everything needed to be expedited, and although it was an unavoidable expense, it was worth every penny. After several days of tension, I finally took a deep breath. The batch of 80,000 cubic meters of 50 millimeters thick steel plates that I had ordered for $48 million also arrived. It seemed about time. I couldn't wait any longer, and we could proceed with the rest once my parents and sister arrived. I worried that the timing of the zombie outbreak might differ from the last time. I sent a message to my sister, "Are you there?" 10 minutes later, my sister replied with just one word, "Sure." Speechless, I could only reply, "There's a new farm stay opening. Will you come?" 20 minutes passed without a reply from her, and I realized what was happening. I sent her another message, "I bought you a bag." I paused, then added, "A Louis Vuitton." Then I saw she was typing. A second later, my sister sent just 2 words, "Location." Speechless, I sent her the location. My sister warned me that if I dared to deceive her, I would be in big trouble. Tricking our parents was much easier, but since they rarely checked WeChat, I had to call them. I told them about a friend's farm stay opening, thanking us with an invitation. I mentioned that my sister would also be there, and spent a good 5 minutes describing the farm stay's fish ponds and free-range chickens and ducks. Subsequently, my parents said they would arrive tomorrow. On the 7th day, with only 3 days left before the zombie outbreak, my sister arrived first, and I went out to greet her. As soon as she saw me, she said, "You little rascal, where's my bag? If you dared to trick me, you'd be dead. Is this a farm stay or a prison?" I replied, "It's a farm stay converted from a prison. Your bag is in the room." All prepared in advance. In the afternoon, our parents also arrived. My dad asked me, "Chemzi, where's your friend?" I casually replied, "Oh, he just went out to check some goods, and there's still some stuff he hasn't bought. He said we should just wander around and enjoy ourselves." My parents didn't think much of it, finding it a bit strange, but went to check out the fish ponds and the poultry. Seeing that my parents had arrived, I quickly contacted the construction team to start working on the perimeter. I had planned 3 trenches for the outer defense. The first trench, right against the wall, would have 2 layers of 20-meter wide steel plates buried under it, then refilled with soil. Between the 2 layers of steel plates, there was a theft prevention wire mesh connected to an electrical wire which would trigger an alarm if touched. The second and third trenches, each 10 meters deep and 10 meters wide, spaced 10 meters apart, with the third trench filled with water and connected to an electric cable. These would only be electrified if the wall and the second trench were breached. serving as my last line of defense. On the 8th day, with just 2 days left until the zombie outbreak, my parents had hardly slept all night, and after a day of observing and looking at the 2 long trenches, each 2,000 meters long and 10 meters deep, they were exhausted. If this was supposed to be a rural retreat, it would be laughable. It's clearly a transformed prison. At night, we sleep in cells just like inmates. My sister was still reveling in the joy of a supposed cure-all, and our parents couldn't hold back their questions about what was really going on. I knew I couldn't hide it anymore. I had no choice but to take them to my basement and tell them everything that had happened in my previous life and before. When my father heard how his unfilial son had sold his marital home, he was ready to display a grand act of fatherly love. However, when I showed him the remaining 100 million plus on my phone, it barely stopped his overwhelming paternal affection. At this point, my sister chimed in, although I can't quite accept it. Guessing the outcome of Saudi Arabia versus Argentina without prior knowledge would indeed be hard. Then, my mother helped me by saying, "Don't you know your own son? He might seem frivolous, but has he ever let us down at crucial times? Besides, even though he has spent over 100 million, there's still a lot left, even if there's no zombie outbreak. I think this place is quite nice for retirement." My father thought it over and agreed that, even if zombies didn't appear this time, the place was still good for retirement. Besides, the 2 fish ponds were really well made and could potentially bring in a good income later on. After hearing my account, my father was a bit uneasy. We walked around the prison to see if there were any oversights. As the construction crew was about to leave, I couldn't rest easy. I stopped them and handed them 100,000 yuan to dig a 10-meter deep trench around the prison walls. Watching the busy crew, I felt a pang of guilt but was unsure what else to do. I gave each worker a 10,000 yuan bonus, casually mentioning, "You've all made enough money this year. It's time to go home and spend time with your wives and kids, or your parents if you're single. With a severe epidemic outside, it's good to have some extra cash to stock up on food and drinks at home. You've all worked hard these past few days." The workers were grateful, but I felt a heavy weight in my heart, as if something was pressing down on me. I just hoped that as many of us as possible could survive. These people are the pillars of their families, sons to their parents, and fathers and husbands to their children and wives. On the 9th day, there was still 1 day left until the zombie outbreak. I barely slept last night, glued to my phone for a long time. A news update about a mall attack, which was 6th on Facebook's trending list, caught my attention. It wasn't particularly noticeable among the usual news and celebrity gossip, but I knew the zombie virus had truly broken out early. Thankfully, I had rushed the transformation of the entire prison at no matter the cost, completing it within a week. My sister noticed too, but we didn't tell our parents. However, by noon they had found out anyway. After seeing a video in their community property group of a man biting a security guard on the ground, they realized that everything their son had said was happening. I had warned my parents that if they didn't want my sister and me to die, they must never share our location with anyone. My prison, located remotely, was barely touched by the sparse zombies, and my defenses were obviously aimed more at living humans. 2 hours later, the trending keywords on Facebook were all about the zombie virus, lockdowns, and epidemics. Scattered videos from abroad also came in, showcasing people scuffling on the famous Shibuya streets in Tokyo and car alarms blaring in the background, as if a devil's tango or a Requiem from Hell were playing. Sensing an impending storm, I turned off my phone but felt surprisingly calm. My prison had just received its first uninvited guest. I was in the surveillance room when a shaky figure on one of the monitors caught my eye. The spread of the zombies was faster than I had imagined. Attracted by my mother, who was sewing seeds inside the walls, a zombie ran towards her, howling. 10 seconds later, with a thud, the zombie fell into the 10-meter deep pit. This confirmed that my prison was likely secure against zombies. 10 days later, something happened, and the internet went down, turning my phone into just a clock. We were cut off from outside information, but fortunately, I had an old radio that could receive signals, though it wasn't very reliable, possibly due to being in the deep mountains. A month had passed since the initial outbreak of zombies. Apart from the occasional zombie falling into a pit, our family of 4 lived a life reminiscent of a hidden paradise. We farmed, fished, raised chickens, and worked from sunrise. We relaxed with TV, video games, billiards, and mahjong from sunset. Although the electric fence was equipped with an alarm system, we still arranged shifts to keep watch at night. This routine was disrupted one day when my sister, finding me playing games in my cell, told me someone outside the walls was calling for me. At the wall, I found both my parents already there, and to my surprise, outside stood the old county mayor, with a bag on his back and his hand bandaged. I was utterly shocked. That old man was still alive. It had been almost 3 months, and aside from looking a bit weary, he even seemed chubbier. Was he doing well? He seemed to have gained weight every so often. The old mayor glanced nervously behind him, as if something was chasing him. He anxiously called out, "Please, let your older brother in quickly." My parents and sister turned to look at me with a strange expression. I shrugged and briefly Explained my past dealings with the old mayor to them. Upon hearing this, my father grew furious, immediately condemning such a parasite of the nation, questioning whether we should save him only for him to continue harming society. My grandfather had survived the counterattack war against Vietnam, and my father was born while he was still enlisted, influenced by my grandfather. My father later served on the Yunnan border for 5 years, only returning to carry on the family lineage. Both my father and grandfather had dedicated their lives to protecting the country and held deep contempt for those who threatened it. But my concern was different. That old man had survived over 3 months before being forced to flee. Where had he gotten food for all these months? I looked at the hatchet in the old mayor's right hand, noticing the dried dark red stains on it, and at the figures chasing him from behind. Having lived through a past life, I knew zombie blood was blackish red. The blood on that hatchet, whose was it? The answer was almost obvious. I clenched my fists, glaring at the old mayor, nearly grinding my teeth to bits, muttering, "This bastard." The old mayor, seeing the figures closing in, cursed loudly, "These useless fools are still chasing me. I'll crush you to dust." With gritted teeth, he strapped the hatchet to his waist, grabbed a log from the ground, and backed up a few steps before attempting a pole vault across the ditch. He barely grabbed the edge of the ditch on the other side, and as he sighed in relief thinking he had survived, suddenly a villager leaped down and grabbed his legs. The old mayor kicked frantically, screaming, "You lowlife, let go of me." Struggling and gradually losing strength, he looked at me in horror, pleading for help. I watched emotionlessly and said, "Go to hell, you dog." With a shriek, the old mayor fell backward, and one by one, villagers pounced on him from above. The heart-wrenching screams didn't last long before they quieted down. I wasn't worried about the zombies in the ditch causing any trouble, like in some world war of zombies climbing out. My ditch was deep enough. The zombies would lose their target and wander aimlessly until they starved. This little incident was soon forgotten by us, perhaps because of our remote location. We didn't face massive hordes of zombies. At most, 100 scattered ones approached, with weaker ultraviolet rays in winter. Electricity was occasionally sparse. Fortunately, the diesel the old mayor brought was plentiful, allowing us to conserve electricity and primarily use solar power, occasionally supplemented by diesel generators to get through the winter. The basement was naturally cool in summer and warm in winter. To save power, we didn't use the heater and moved into the basement. As winter turned to spring, spring arrived quietly while we occasionally sat around the table, enjoying lamb hot pot and grilled skewers. I put down my game console and watched my father cursing as he walked into the kitchen, continually talking about the big black fish that had slipped the hook, vowing to catch it tomorrow to make pickled fish for us. We now had fresh farm eggs every morning. My mother happily tended her vegetable garden and the now sizable flock of chickens and ducks during the day. At night, she would cry, lamenting, "I'd rather embrace the fragrance and die on the branch than be blown down by the north wind. Oh, it's not worth it, sister." As for my sister, she used the new LV bag I bought her to store plenty of aloe vera stems, in preparation for when her skincare products ran out. She had already started studying how to make her aloe vera masks. We had been cut off from the outside world for 6 months. The radio increasingly received fewer signals, and those we did get were intermittent and unclear. Time has slipped through our fingers, and more than a year has passed. During this period, there have been occasional visits by the living, but due to the remote location of the prison, such instances have been rare. Some of those who came had a fierce look in their eyes. But when they saw the 3 deep moats surrounding the area, as well as the wandering zombies in the ditches and the towering walls topped with barbed wire, they reluctantly left. They preferred to try their luck elsewhere rather than risking their lives on such a tough challenge. There were families as well as individuals who came alone, but I too was trapped by my own moats and couldn't get out. All I could do was throw out some food like ham sausages and instant noodles, which I couldn't finish anyway. Rather than letting them expire in the warehouse, I'd rather give them away, hoping that they could last a little longer, at least longer than I did in my previous life. Perhaps the dawn is just delayed. I asked them if they had any news from the outside world, how things were out there, but they too seemed to have lost contact with the outside world for a long time, and I didn't get much useful information. As the second year arrived, encounters with people became even rarer. In total, I met no more than 5 living people that year. There seemed to be an abundance of zombies wandering over from the neighboring areas, falling into the pits outside, one after another. Occasionally, I would remotely control a drone to check the outside world. However, the drone's signal and battery life could only reach the national highway in the county at most. It couldn't return if it went any further. I once tried sacrificing a drone to look further afield, but without exception, all there was to see were ruins and corpses everywhere, with occasional zombies gnawing at the bodies. I lied to my family, claiming to have seen the army in combat, but the drone fell due to battery failure, and then the soldiers were no longer visible. My mother said, "That's a good sign. It means the army is still there, and the country hasn't given up on the people who might still be alive." My father said irritably, "Isn't that obvious? When has our country ever abandoned anyone? What we need To do is to survive well and hold on until the day of the people's victory. My sister just looked at me and said nothing, comforting our parents that we had enough supplies to last a long time, hopefully until the nation's rescue arrives. My hair has grown longer, and if it weren't tied back, it would cover my face. I made a mistake. I bought everything but forgot to buy a hair clipper. My father and I had to let my mother clumsily trim our hair with scissors, as my mother says, isn't cutting hair. Just like pruning crops and trees, my sister managed to make an aloe vera mask, but without sunscreen. Her skin turned from pale to weak-colored over 2 years, but she was happy because she had plenty of time to exercise daily, and she managed to lose the weight she hadn't before the apocalypse. Seeing my family living happily, I too smiled. Whether the dawn arrives or not, we are our own dawn, shining light and warmth on the path beneath our feet. The road might be a bit muddy, but our steps forward are firm and strong. The pages of the calendar have turned, one after another, and we no longer use our phones. Time has lost its meaning to us. June 12th. Today is the second time I've turned to this page in the calendar. It's been 3 years since the zombie outbreak began. Unexpectedly, dawn finally arrived on the third year. That day, 3 fully armed strangers appeared at the gates of our prison, each holding a Type 95 assault rifle. In my previous life of 2.5 years on the run, hadn't I seen people with weapons knocking on doors in apartment buildings? And those who trustingly opened their doors never came out again. One must not harbor ill intentions, but it is necessary to guard against others. Unsure of the true identities of these 3, I quickly told my parents to stay down and not show themselves. I asked the 3 what they were doing and why there were only 3 of them. They replied they were out searching for survivors, and the roads were blocked with the wreckage of cars that hadn't been cleared yet, making it impossible for vehicles to get through. Recalling the state of the roads outside, it was indeed as they said. My father and I exchanged glances, stating that we too couldn't get out, and we were just managing to get by with our food supplies. Let them first check if there are any other survivors. We can be ignored for now. The 3 are uncertain whether they genuinely can't enter or indeed see that we pose no threat. It's unclear if it was just an act, but after speaking into the walkie-talkie, they turned and left. After their departure, we held a discussion. My father and I agreed that caution is the best approach, especially since we've been out of touch with the outside world for 3 years and are unsure of the true origins of these 3 individuals. My mother suggested that perhaps things are as they said outside, that a vaccine has been developed, although those who have died cannot be brought back. Those who are still alive might gain immunity and no longer need to fear mutations. My sister remain neutral, making it 2 against 1. Ultimately, I proposed that we first take some supplies and hide in the basement, moving all the furniture from our cell-like rooms into the mezzanine to avoid detection of the secret door. Using the surveillance room, we observed the outside situation. If they truly were from a search and rescue organization, that would be ideal. If they were hostiles, they likely wouldn't be able to find us or get in. Eventually, my proposal was approved. Our family moved into the basement. A week passed with complete silence outside, and I thought everything was over. Suddenly, the calm of the week was shattered by the surveillance footage showing fully armed individuals moving inside our prison. Damn it, how did they silently get into the prison? They searched briefly, approaching our dormitory building. I wasn't sure if they could discover the mezzanine between the 2 dorms. I quickly alerted my family. My mother and sister hid in their room, while my father and I hid on either side of the basement entrance. I prayed they wouldn't find our hiding spot, but I grew worried that if they didn't leave, our food supply below would eventually run out, and we would inevitably be discovered. Footsteps gradually approached. My father and I exchanged a tense look, gripping our sticks tightly. The basement door creaked open. My father and I swung our sticks at the first person who entered. The person fell to the ground in pain, and others rushed in behind him. I was quickly subdued, with multiple attackers against him and his age. My father was firmly pinned down by 3 people. Seeing this, my mother and sister, who rushed over, were tightly grabbed by one person with both hands. Then the last person to enter shouted, "Calm down, we're here to rescue you." He also yelled at the 5 who had entered first, "Hurry up and let them go. And you, boy, I told you, sweat more in peacetime, bleed less in wartime. You almost got knocked down coming up here." The person who had pinned me down stood upright, holding his nose, not daring to speak. It was then we truly saw the faces of our rescuers. Our emotions collapsed, and unable to hold back, my mother and sister clung to each other crying. Tears also welled up in my eyes. 3 years, 3 years, finally, victory. Once we got outside, we saw a helicopter hovering in the sky. That's when I realized how these people had gotten in. 3 years later, I sat at the reception desk scrolling through Facebook. The top trending topic read, 6th anniversary of the zombie outbreak. Online, some had lost their lovers, others their fathers, some were all alone. Everyone was reminiscing about their loved ones and expressing their unending longing. My father entered laughing, carrying a blackfish. Haha, today's menu includes sauerkraut fish. My mother was busy in the kitchen. Hearing my father come in, she shouted loudly, "Hurry and come help me, I'm swamped." Father, carrying the fish, ran into the kitchen laughing, haha, coming. After the disaster, we returned to this prison. I donated $50 million for the reconstruction of the surrounding towns and counties. Over 3 years, the nearby towns gradually recovered. We kept the dormitory buildings of the prison as the main facilities, transformed the cells into themed guest rooms, and added other projects, truly starting a farmstay business. These years, people online preferred not to go to big cities but liked visiting niche places. Using the experience of prison life as a gimmick, my sister created a themed prison-style farmstay that attracted guests online, specifically handling family